Right. And we are live. Look at that. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. I see that my internet connection is exactly what you would expect for Florida in the summer, which is to say, it's not really the most stable right now. But I'm looking at this and it's working. There's stuff happening. So, hi, everybody. Where's my chat? Let's get the chat back here. Hey, chat room. Thanks for being here. This is the pre-show, by the way, for our 220-1101 A+ study group. This is a new edition, if you will, a new version, a new iteration of the study group. So this is sort of the first in what will probably be about 3 years worth of study groups. So that part's good. We've sort of made the jump, so to speak, over to the 1101 exam. So all the questions that we're going to do today come from or are about information from the 220-1101 exam objectives. Now, if you're studying for the 1001, you've got 3 years worth of 1001 study groups to go through. So you've still got plenty of content that will help you for the exam, and I really encourage you to go back and look at those replays. It's just like what we're going to do today, except specific to the 1001 and 1002, because we do two of these. We do one today, and in 2 days, we'll do another one, usually Tuesday and Thursday. Not always, but you can always check the calendar to find out. So I think we are ready to go with this. We've got a lot of the studio really ready to go because we just finished, I don't say just finished, a couple of weeks ago, or was it last week? We finished recording all of the 1102 and posting all the 1102 content. So the studio has been used constantly for the past number of months. So it's kind of nice to be out of that mode and into this mode of doing live streams and have some other content I'm working on for the 1101, which I hope you will like. We'll get that out over the coming weeks. So we're not done. We're never done. There's always something going on. But specific to the 1101, we've even got more things coming. So it's always good. It's always, always, always good. So that's where I sit with this. This is the pre-show of the study group. Normally you don't just see behind me. Normally you see in front of me like this. So don't worry. There is an actual show that will be starting at the top of the hour. We've got about 5 minutes to go, and we'll get starting this. No Tails in the chat room passed Security Plus on the 29th of June. Congratulations. Glad to hear about the Security Plus. That's always a challenging exam. Yeah, and speaking of the setup, Ja, in the chat room, 5-minute warning. A few things are going to change probably this weekend. I have been working from an iMac Pro. Remember the iMac Pro? Yeah, that's what I'm still running. They don't even make these anymore. They don't promote them anymore, but that's what I've been using really for the last 3 years. We've been doing all of our 4K editing, everything we do is on that system. So I finally got a new computer. But I'm in the middle of doing all of these things, and I can't convert. There's a fantastic conversion program that Apple has. You just plug them in, they find each other, and everything gets moved over to the other machine automatically. Just it's magic. But I just don't have enough time to do it. So this weekend, I'll probably make that jump. So maybe when you show up next week for the Network Plus study group, perhaps this will be a new monitor. Perhaps we will be running from a new system. We will find out. This was a challenge, if only to get your hands on those new systems. I think I ordered that system months ago, but there was nothing shipping. So I couldn't get the computer I wanted to use to create the A+ series wasn't available. So I just did it on the existing system, and I worked like a champ. Worked fantastic. This is a workhorse, this machine. I built it to be a workhorse at the very beginning, but 3 years later, 3 years plus later, it only works so well. So I'm looking forward to a lot snappier graphics. I'm looking forward to some faster performance, especially for rendering. I know I just finished the latest course, but it's kind of nice to have something ready to go. I'm ready to render some more things. So that part's good. Love it. I love it. Love it. It's challenging. And then Carrie in the chat room passed Network Plus a couple days ago. Congratulations. Studying for Security Plus. That's awesome. Which is more difficult, Network Plus or Security Plus? Oh, those are two different exams. I would say the difficulty level for Security Plus is not much higher, but maybe one step above Network Plus, because Security Plus is so much larger than Network Plus is. Security Plus is, I guess, 1.5 times the size. It's probably about right. Maybe not quite as much, but pretty close to that. But it's a much larger exam to study for, and therefore, because of that, a little bit more challenging. So that's the only thing. You just have to remember more. That's the hard part. But I think the difficulty level, if you want to get into the Olympics of it, the difficulty level of the Network Plus and Security Plus are very comparable when you start taking the exam. It's just you have to know a lot more for Security Plus, and therefore it's a little more difficult. That's my opinion. We'll have to figure it out. And in the chat room, I see a number of you in the chat room are working on your 1001 and 1002, 1001, 1002, because it retires on October the 20th. We'll talk about that in a moment. In fact, let's get our slideware ready to go here. We need that. I need green light. Got a green light. Nice. Cameras look good. We are recording here. We are recording online. Just before I went live, internet went down for a moment. So it's entirely possible that that might continue throughout this event. So bear with me. I will be recording everything locally. So if there is a significant outage, well, then we can work through that. You can at least watch the replay to get that. Richard in Bradenton, Florida. Hello, fellow Floridian. Just passed 1001 and 1002. Turn your A+ certification at 65 years old. Now, everybody should be working on that. Everybody should be so lucky to earn their A+. And congratulations on that. Always fun. Hey, Malk from St. Vincent. Thank you for being here. Number of folks checking in. Number of folks arriving. Make yourself comfortable. We're starting here in about, well, a few moments. Looks good here. Looks good here. I think we might just do a study group here in just a few seconds. It's almost the top of the hour. That happened fast. That's good. I like all of these. Come back to this. Very nice. Okay. And it's top of the hour, everybody. Let's do a live stream. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July 2022 Professor Messer 220-1101 A+ study group. This is our first A+ study group on the new version of the exam objectives. That is the 220-1101. And of course, in a couple of days, we'll do a 220-1102. We'll talk in a moment about what that means for people who are still studying for the, I don't want to call it the older version of the exam because it's still the current version of the exam, for the other version of the exam. We'll say that. And we'll talk more about what that means and how it fits into the big scheme of things and what this all means time-wise. We'll break it down for you. Of course, you're welcome to ask any questions in the after show, because that's what we do. In this first hour, I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And then in the after show, which is in the second hour, I open up the chat room and answer any questions you might have about the exam, about IT, about your career, about anything, really. You're welcome to ask any question you would like. I don't know that I will answer any question, but I'll answer most questions. I think that's reasonable. We'll make that happen. If you are here live, and we hope you are able to follow along and answer interactively online, which is kind of nice. If you're here on a replay, this won't be available to you, but that's okay. You can always go back during the replay and follow along with what we're doing. But if you are here live, pop open a new browser window. Browse over to professormesser.com/QA. There's a question waiting for you if you do that right now. We'll look at that question in a moment. If you would like to use an app for this, because of course you would, it is called the Socrative Student app. A service is called Socrative that I use, and they have an app called the Student app. There's a Socrative Teacher app. That's the one for me. You download the Socrative Student app for you. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. So that's the way it works. So Kevin in the chat room already starting with the questions. Hold your questions for the second hour, but I like your question, which is, what's my Social Security number? See, those are the hard-hitting questions I'm looking for in that second hour. Stick around, and we will see if I disclose that in the second hour. Spoiler alert, not going to disclose it. Let's talk about the question that is up right now, though. There's a question waiting for you that you can answer. It says, an administrator needs to modify the available memory and storage space available in a virtual machine. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it NAT, rapid elasticity, VDI, hypervisor, or UE5 BIOS? Well, that's a lot to go through. I want you to look at that question, see what you can answer relating to that question. We will come back to that question and the answers in just a moment. If you are online, you'd like to answer it, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Of course, no hints in the chat room especially. We're going to pretend that we're in our exam, and we're doing this right now, so we'll see how it goes with this. I want to also let you know that we do one of these study groups every month, but when we're not here, there's plenty of things to look at on the website. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube to see all of our YouTube videos. And of course, all of our 1101 and 1102 courses are available on YouTube right now. So you got plenty to go through. There's a lot on the YouTube we've done. I think in the last 2 weeks, I probably released about 50 different videos. So who knows what's going on with that? We'll have to figure it out. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. We've also got daily pop quiz questions for the 1101 and 1102. Those are available on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. And if you like it with a pretty picture, and who doesn't, go to professormesser.com/Instagram. Also, stick around. Sometime in this first hour, I will give you a super secret code of the month that you're able to use to send me an email, and then I will send you back a note that has a digitally signed email that certifies that you were here and you have earned 1 hour of a continuing education unit credit specific to webinars. It's a webinar category. CEU. You can collect for A+, you can collect 4 of those in a single 3-year renewal period. So you can't watch all of my videos to renew your certification, unfortunately. I wish you could. I think that would be great, but not so much. You got to do a lot of other things. And of course, this is not the only way to renew. If you have questions about renewal, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have in that second hour. Well, let's talk about certifications before we jump into the Q&A. You could take 2 different series of certifications right now. There's literally 2 separate sets of exams that you could possibly sign up for and take to earn your A+ certification. The first pair of these, and you have to take just this pair to earn your A+, or take the other pair. We'll talk the other pair in just a moment. But this pair that I am referring to specifically is the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. This is an exam series that was released in January 19th of 2019. And people often will send me notes these days saying, that seems like it's kind of old. Well, it is a little bit old because every 3 years or 3.5 years or so, we rotate out these exam versions. So this current existing January 15th, 2019, 1001 and 1002 versions will retire on October the 20th. Well, if you do the math, we're in July, August, September, October, 3 months to go. That's not a lot of time. So if you are already studying, keep pushing. If you've already passed one of these exams, you must pass the other exam before October the 20th. Otherwise, you have to start over. You don't want that to happen. So now's the time to turn on the afterburners and finish this thing out if you've been working on the 1001 or 1002 exams. These 2 exams are 90 minutes long for each of them. On the 1001, you need to earn a 675 score on a scale from 100 to 900. The 1002 is slightly harder. You have to earn a 700 on that same scale of 100 to 900. And even though the exams are retiring in October, if you pass both of these exams, you are certified for 3 years. The certification doesn't have a retirement date. It's just the exams have a retirement date. The certifications have an expiration date that is 3 years after the point where you have earned that cert. So this is one that can really, really help you if you're planning to get in under the wire. You're good for 3 years after you pass. So that part's really good. Now, a number of you in the chat room may be starting your studies right now, and you would like to take the latest exams, and probably 3 months of a ramp is a very, I won't say a very aggressive schedule, but it's an aggressive study schedule. I generally say that about 2 months per A+ exam is a good study pace. So that's 4 months worth of exams in a 3-month time period. You see there's a physics problem here. So if you are just starting your studies or you're at the very beginning of your studies, you might want to consider taking the newer version of the exams. They are the 1101 and 1102. This looks almost like the same number, but it's not. I'll go back one. So there's the 1001 and 1002. Here's the 1101 and 1102. These exams were released in April, so they've been out for a number of months now. And about this point, I usually tell you about 3 months in is about the time where most study materials are available for you to watch. And that seems to be the case here as well. So you actually do have plenty of ramp there because those exams don't retire until November, probably November of 2025. That's an estimate. Usually it's about 3.5 years before an exam is retired. So November 2025 is a pretty good date. Of course, you should always check with CompTIA to know exactly when that date will be, but we're so far away, we don't know when the exact date will be. Hopefully you're not still studying for this exam in November of 2025, since we are indeed sitting here in July of 2022. The exam requirements are identical, however. In fact, the structure of the exam is identical. The domains are identical. Almost everything about the exam structure and format is exactly the same as the 1001 and 1002. So that part makes it very easy. What I tend to tell people when they're trying to decide which one of these do I take, at this point, it's a numbers game. It's a calendar. It's a how fast can I get through all of those study materials? And that's why I tell people, if you don't think you're going to make it by October the 20th, this is the version you should be taking, the 1101 and the 1102. To give you an idea of how this exam has changed, it practically is identical format to the previous version. In fact, on the slide, you can see that I have listed the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. All I did was change the numbers. You can't see the 1102 because my big head's in the way, but you can see that the structure exactly the same. The numbers exactly the same. So if you are transitioning from one to the other, you're moving and migrating from the 1001 to the 1101 or the 1002 to the 1102, you'll find that it's very familiar, which is good. The content within them, of course, is quite different, but the basic structure of the exam is basically the same. So that's it. Good question in the chat room, and an important one to consider is you must take both exams from the same exam version, the same exam series. So if you take the 1001, you must take the 1002 to be A+ certified. You cannot take the 1001 and the 1102. Those are two different exam series. They cannot be used or swapped in and or out with the other. So you must take both exams from the same exam series. You can take them in any order you would like, but they both must come from the same exam series. That's why I tell you that if you've passed either the 1001 or 1002, make sure you pass the other one before October the 20th, or you have to start everything over again. And nobody wants to do that. So keep that in mind as well. We'll talk more about that in the after show. I am certain some folks have some other questions about that, and we will absolutely go back to that to have a look. Don't forget that we have video replays of this live stream available immediately afterward on YouTube. It takes a couple of minutes to process, and then it's automatically made available to you. There's also an audio-only version of this available in podcast format. You can find it on my website at professormesser.com/podcast, and we have it there for our A+, our Network Plus, and our Security Plus study groups. If you go to YouTube and look at the replay, you'll notice not only do we have the replay there, but it is completely time-stamped. How does it do this automatically? Well, the answer is it does not. A human being must watch and listen to this entire stream over again and mark where all of these timestamps are. This human being is Lori, my marketing manager. She's watching the replay now. Hey, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. She goes through and puts timestamps on all of these. You can now go back years of these study groups and find all of these timestamps, so you're able to locate exactly what you're looking for very, very, very quickly. Nice way to do it, and it's something a lot of people have emailed me and said, this helps me find exactly what I'm looking for. I can go through this content in exactly the way I want to go through it, which I think is the point whenever you're trying to find something of this type on the YouTube. So make sure you have a look at that as well. It usually takes about a day to get those posted, so please be patient with us. We will get it there, but it happens really quickly. It's like magic. Lori is like magic. That's what she does. She's so good at doing all of that. Also, when we're not doing these live streams, come on over to Discord. We've got plenty of chatting going on there. We can talk about A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or any of my courses. There is a link on my website on professormesser.com in the upper right-hand corner, or simply visit the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/Discord, and join us there. There's myself and many others are there. We're more than happy to chat, have a conversation, see what's going on with your studies, and maybe offer some recommendations and suggestions. Eventually, if you are in the U.S. or Canada, you will need to take your exam. So feel free to stop by our website at professormesser.com/vouchers and get discounted vouchers. They're already discounted. You don't need a discount code. You don't have to wait till a certain date or time for them to go on sale. I'm not even sure what that really means. It's the internet. Everything should just be available to you. So on my site, everything is already discounted. You just simply need to purchase the voucher, and it's certainly less than you would pay if you purchased it directly from the Pearson VUE store. Not only do you get the voucher, but if you buy it from professormesser.com, you get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. Maybe this can give you some tips or tricks for studying, tips or tricks during the exam that might score you a few extra points. And if things don't go so well, I do also give you some suggestions for additional studies if you need to take the exams again. And of course, you can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Okay, enough of me talking in the first part of this. Let's go to that question we asked earlier, which was, an administrator needs to modify the available memory and storage space available in a virtual machine. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it NAT, rapid elasticity, VDI, hypervisor, or UEFI BIOS? 56% of you say it is hypervisor. 25% of you say it's network address translation, or NAT. These seem like very, very related. This is very similar to the results we had last month, because this is our rewind question from last month. So network address translation, although a quarter of you chose that one, that is not the one we were looking for. We were looking for the hypervisor, the software that manages all of these virtual machines. It manages the CPU usage between VMs. It manages memory usage. You have to have something that is managing access to all of these physical components inside the system. And so that is exactly where you should also look for these, is on the hypervisor. And indeed, 57% of you did choose hypervisor. That is the right answer. Would not be rapid elasticity. It's a cloud-based characteristic that describes rapid increase or decrease in available resources. It's not VDI, the virtual desktop interface, or there's other types of abbreviations associated with VDI, but that's pretty close to what it is. VDI is a way to have all of your desktops located in the cloud. Nice functionality, but in this particular case, not the one we were looking for. You could have your own VDI local. It doesn't have to be in the cloud. I recognize that as well. And then UEFI BIOS is the type of BIOS we have on all of our modern devices. The BIOS has nothing to do with making available memory. the best answer here, the one that fits the best, is indeed hypervisor. Answer D, 57% of you got that one absolutely right. Maybe you remembered from last month because that was our rewind question from last month's version. And it is indeed, although I did not put the 1101 link on that previous slide, it is also an 1101 question as well. Well, we got more questions to go through. Before we do that real quick, let me recognize Richard in the chat room with the $25 super chat. Richard, coming off the top rope. Richard writes, thanks so much for your instruction and material. Recently earned my A+ 2 weeks ago. Recently retired from the healthcare field at 65, looking to expand my knowledge in tech to stay relevant in the 21st century. Well, you're in a good place. You are certainly top of mind with all of the latest technologies because you now have your A+ certification. And I think there's options regardless of your age to work in the technology field. It is an exciting field. It's one for anybody. And thankfully, the computer has no idea how old you are, which I'm beginning to appreciate more and more every day. So congratulations, Richard, on your A+ certification. And thank you also for your $25 super chat. Also quickly, Jose in the chat room, the vouchers that I provide on my website for the U.S. and Canada, in this particular case, this also means U.S. territories. So if you're in Guam, Puerto Rico, they are also available to you as well. So absolutely. I have many people in Puerto Rico that have already taken advantage of that and used my vouchers for their exams. Let's do some new questions. So as you probably are aware, when you start your exam, or maybe you're not aware, when you start your A+ exam, the first series of questions on the exam, probably I call it the first handful of questions, 5 or so questions, plus or minus, will not be multiple choice. The one we just did that had a question and multiple choices to choose from, you pick A, B, C, or D, or E in this case, that is a multiple choice question. But CompTIA gives you at the beginning of the exam a series of what they call performance-based questions. Those performance-based questions could be fill in the blank, matching, drag and drop, putting things in a particular order. It's just any type of question that isn't multiple choice. Now, fortunately, these types of questions are still covering topics that are from the exam objectives. It's just a different way to ask you the question. It's not something you should get too involved with. Not all of the questions are labs or simulations, although they certainly could present you with one. They could pop you at a command prompt, for example, and say, perform a particular function at a command prompt. But that usually is not the bulk of the questions. There's usually a mix of different types. So I have for you this mix of different types that are available. So let me give you today's performance-based question. And of course, we write all of these new every month. So this is one you've not seen before. This is a sorting question, if you will. We want to have things in a particular order. The question asks, sort these technologies from highest throughput to lowest. And I have 5 different technologies here. They are one stream of 802.11ax. We have a USB 3.2 Gen 2x2, or 2 times 2. We have SATA Revision 3.2. We have Thunderbolt V3, and we have 10G base T. So I want to know what those throughputs are, and I want you to order them. Well, I guess you don't have to tell me what they are, but I would like you to order them from highest throughput to lowest. So there is our performance-based question. If you think you know the answer, please visit the link on your screen right there, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to lock it in on the website at professormesser.com/QA. There's a number of people already putting their answers in. I can start to see them come through. This is sort of a sorting question. It could be a drag and drop. There could be a way to do that. It just seemed easier online to simply put letters. So if they're already in the proper order, all you have to type in is A, B, C, D, E. You don't have to type the whole thing out. However, remember what you typed in because there's no way to see that once you submit it. So that's another thing to keep in mind. We will go through all of these. And while you're thinking about what that answer is, the proctor in the chat room with the $10 super chat says, earned my A+ certification at the end of June, all thanks to your material. Well, My material wasn't in the room when you took the exam. So I think all the thanks goes to you, but I appreciate the sentiment. The practice exams were invaluable. Oh, great. I'm glad you were able to take the practice exams. We spend a lot of time making those practice exams as specific and precise and accurate and applicable to the exam objectives as possible. I dare say they're the most applicable set, the most relevant set of exams that you will find anywhere. I've seen the others. The proctor also says, thank you very much for what you do. On to Network Plus. Congratulations for your A+. I'm glad you're looking at getting the Network Plus. As I've often said, that's an exam that kind of ties everything together in the world of IT. And once you understand the network, you sort of understand everything else at a certain level. It certainly helps. That's what I found in my career anyway. I spent a lot of time on the network side. I love doing the networking. I spent a lot of time in networking. I spent a lot of time in operating systems, and I spent a lot of time on the security side in my career. And the network is the one thing that kind of helped me in every other aspect of IT. So thank you, Proctor, for your $10 super chat. Congratulations on your A+. Best of luck with Network Plus as well. Let's see how we're doing. I'm watching the answers come through. A number of you are locking in your answers. Let's step through each one of these technologies from highest throughput to lowest and see what we have. Let's clear the slate, as they say. And let's start with, if you had to choose one of these, what would be the highest throughput? Let's see what I say it is. We'll start at the very top. And I say answer D, Thunderbolt V3 should go at the top of the list. And why do I say that? Well, because the overall, the accumulated, the aggregate throughput of Thunderbolt V3 is 40 gigabits a second, 40 gigabits a second. That's a pretty fast network. So Thunderbolt V3 is what I have at the top of my list as being the highest throughput of all of those different technologies. Second on my list are those weird USB names. If you watch my newer 1101 USB video, then you know that USB changes the names with every version. And so this is the latest version of names, the USB 3.2 Gen 2 times 2. And it's sort of a Gen 2, but it's two of them. So it's 2 times 2. I didn't know there would be higher math on this. If you do the math, that comes out to be 20 gigabits per second. So indeed, USB 3.2, kind of the latest version, really not the latest version. USB 4 kind of is the latest version, but the 3.2 version, kind of half the speed of what you might expect from Thunderbolt version 3. Next on our list, SATA Revision 3.2. That was answer C. And if you look at the numbers for SATA Revision 3.2, it operates at approximately 16 gigabits per second. That would be third on our list. Fourth on our list would be Ethernet standard 10G base T. And as that name implies, the 10G on 10G base T is 10 gig a second. So your 10 gigabit networking is that 10G base T standard. It's 10G, which is 10 gig. Base ostensibly means baseband, which means it's a single frequency that's used to communicate over that network. And the T can mean twisted pair. Those particular abbreviations don't technically mean anything, but at least they remind us of some aspects or characteristics of that particular standard that we can at least remember. So that part's good. 10G base T. That means we only have one left. That is one stream of 802.11ax. That's one of the latest wireless networking standards. And one stream of that operates at approximately 1.2 gigabits per second. Obviously, you would be able to get much higher performance by using multiple streams, and many devices do. We talk more about that in the video for the 802.11 standards. You can learn more about that in our 1101 course. So those are the answers. If we were to sort this from highest throughput to lowest, first on our list was answer D, Thunderbolt V3 at 40 gigabits per second. Next is B, USB 3.2 Gen 2 times 2 is 20 gigabits per second. Third on our list is SATA Revision 3.2 at 16 gigabits per second. Next to last is 10G base T at 10 gigabits per second. And lastly is one stream of 802.11ax at approximately 1.2 gigabits per second. That's what that little tilde is, approximately 1.2 gigabits per second. So that works as well. So now you have at least some idea of how throughputs are. Notice that some of these are very new technologies. If you've been studying for the 1101, how many of these are new on the 1101 versus the 1001? The Thunderbolt V3 was in the 1001. USB 3.2 was not, so that's new. SATA Revision 3.2 was not. That's a new one. 10G base 2, I think, was on the old one. And then 802.11ax is certainly new on this version as well. So hopefully you're getting an idea of what some of these newer technologies are. You can see that they are new for the 1101. So I was glad to do a performance-based question that integrated some of those newer topics that you will find on the 220 1101 exam. Before we hop to another question, Edgar in the chat room with a $4.99 super chat says, your videos did clear up things for my 1101. I did pass. Congratulations, Edgar, on your 1101. Are you planning on an 1102 study group the next couple of, 1102 study the next couple of months? I think you mean the study group. Well, today is Tuesday, Thursday. 2 days from now at the same time, we're doing an 1102 study group. We've already shifted those over. And of course, all of my 1102 videos are available to watch on YouTube. All of my courses for those series are all done. So certainly there and available. Thank you, Edgar, for the $4.99 super chat. Congratulations on your Core 1. Best of luck with your Core 2 exam as well. Let's do another question. I've got one here that this one sort of applies to any of the previous versions of the exam. The question asks, the Windows 10 desktop on an HDMI LCD appears blurry and difficult to read. Which of the following would be the most likely fix for this issue? Would it be reboot, change the video input, modify the resolution, increase the contrast, or replace the video cable? As always, if you think you know the answer, follow the link right there on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. That question again is, the Windows 10 desktop on an HDMI LCD appears blurry and difficult to read. Which of the following would be the most likely fix for this issue? Is it reboot, change the video input, modify the resolution, increase the contrast, or replace the video cable? Got a few things to choose from. If you think you know the answer, lock it in. Go to professormesser.com/QA, put in your answer. Got a lot to go through on these questions. This certainly is one that applies both for the 1001 and 1101. So if you are here and watching this live stream and you're planning to take that previous version, this is probably a topic that would apply to you as well. There's a section in, I think this one is in section 1. No, it's section 5. It's a troubleshooting section on troubleshooting video. So this is definitely a troubleshooting problem. Someone calls you, they call you the help desk, they say, it's blurry, can't read it, help. And then you have to figure out the rest. So this is why you get the big bucks. This is why they pay you, because you have to somehow decipher it's blurry into what does that mean technically? What could that possibly be relating to? So let's see what you think the answer is. That question again asks, the Windows 10 desktop on an HDMI LCD appears blurry and difficult to read. Which of the following would be the most likely fix for this issue? Is it reboot, change the video input, modify the resolution, increase the contrast, or replace the video cable? So let's see what you think the answer is. 71% of you say modify the resolution. We've got 15% of you, double digits, however, that say replace the video cable. I think the one I would have chosen came in last at 3%. I always say just reboot. Have you rebooted? Maybe that'll fix it. In this question, though, probably not the one we were looking for. And indeed, only 3% of you chose that option. 5% said increase the contrast. Not really having a contrast issue. 6% said change the video input. So really our question becomes, it's blurry, it's difficult to read. What are we going to do to help resolve this problem? Well, this is a common issue. If you've been working with LCD displays, it absolutely is an issue being able to see what's going on. maybe the image is distorted. Maybe there are problems understanding what's on the image. Maybe you can't quite see what's happening there. But we at least have some image on the screen. So because we're at least getting something, we know that it's not an issue with the video input. Because if it was the video input, you just have a black screen. You wouldn't see anything. But we are seeing something. So we know it's not the video input. So what we should really do is check the refresh rate. Normally, this is something set automatically in the definition files for the monitor that you're using. Hopefully, your Windows is configured with the proper monitor in the display settings. The one that probably is the problem are the resolution settings. And that's because an LCD, a liquid crystal display, has a certain number of pixels on the screen. And if you are sending it exactly that number of pixels from your video card, then you will get the crispest, is that a word? The most crisp, that's not even close to being what I want to relay to you. But the sharpest view of what you would see would be one that the video card is sending a resolution that matches what we call the native resolution of the monitor. So if you're matching it exactly, then you will get the sharpest, cleanest view, the crispiest. See, it's like a breakfast cereal. It's the crispiest view. Now, let's say that you've now sent the monitor a resolution that is not the native number of pixels. The monitor has to extrapolate from there. How do I take the total number of pixels I have and somehow make the resolution that you're sending to me? Well, now it has to kind of group together pixels or somehow make it look a little better. And in the process of doing that, it really makes it not quite as crisp, not quite as clear, a little more blurry. So having a different resolution will certainly affect how visible the information is on the screen. And that's why the answer here, 72% of you said modify the resolution. That is almost exactly what this problem issue is on this. I often see this where people have purchased a brand new monitor. Maybe they were running an HD monitor, 1080p, and now they purchased a 4K monitor, but they feel like when they were looking at it in 4K that everything was so much smaller, because it is so much smaller when you are looking at a 1-to-1 ratio there. You're effectively, 4K is effectively 4 high definition screens in one single view. So everything's kind of shrunk down by a factor of 4. And if you're someone who's been working on a screen and you're trying to now see, the icons are so much smaller. So some people will set the resolution lower, not realizing that the screen is actually not quite as clear. What you really should be doing is changing the scaling parameters inside of the operating system to keep the 4K resolution, but make all the icons bigger, make all of the user interface bigger. That's what you should be doing, and that would be your best choice to be able to do that. Yes, we can absolutely get into people buying the 4K monitors, or in fact, King Chewy in the chat room has a perfect example. They've got a monitor that can perform at 144 hertz. That's quite a fast refresh rate, but they're not using the right cable to get the proper refresh rate. I don't think that's necessarily one of the troubleshooting steps or things you need to know for the exam, but it's a common one, and you might run into that very often. So your answer here, 72% of you modify the resolution. Rebooting is not going to help you. It's simply going to reboot and still be blurry because we haven't really changed the root cause of the issue. Changing the video input obviously would either, in this particular case, changing the input would turn it completely black. It's not what we're looking for either. If this was completely black, maybe changing the video input would eventually allow us to find the right signal. But that's not the right answer. Increasing the contrast. Our problem here isn't contrast. It's blurriness and difficult to read. Normally, that is not specific to contrast. Certainly, having a very high contrast can cause a little bit of blowout in the whites, certainly in the colors. So it could be a little bit more difficult if the contrast was set really high. But in this case, we're asking for the most likely fix, and increasing the contrast is probably not your issue. Replacing the video cable. This is HDMI. It's digital. You either see the signal or you don't. We're not getting blocking. We're not getting compression errors. We're not seeing garbage or noise on the screen. So our problem is probably not with the cable. The problem indeed here is what 72% said. Answer C, modify the resolution. You're absolutely right. Spot on. Well done with that. Let's do another question. Let's go to another multiple choice question. And this one, an interesting one. We'll keep the same kind of vein of question, which asks, which of the following does not require a backlight for normal operation? Is that OLED, Thunderbolt, HDMI, or a TN LCD? Which of the following does not require a backlight for normal operation? Is that OLED, Thunderbolt, HDMI, or TN LCD? Do you think you know the answer? Follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to that link right there to lock it in. In the chat room also, we've got the Revolution Cafe with the $5 super chat. Thank you for that. The note there says, I can't wait to pass 1101 and 1102 exams based on your videos and study book. I can't wait for you to pass either. Those are very good places to start with the videos, your study books, maybe get some Q&A, lots of hands-on. I love the idea of going through the newer sets of exams too, especially if you're starting right now. So I think that would be a good one. If you're working towards trying to figure out what you should do to study on the 1101, 1102, you have lots of choices now. Wasn't that way 3 months ago. There was hardly anything available. So I think now, we're in pretty good to be able to work through this. Let's see what we're doing here with this one. Which of the following does not require a backlight for normal operation? Is it OLED, Thunderbolt, HDMI, or TN LCD? Let's see how you answered this one. And you can see that 72% of you, almost the same statistic we saw earlier in our previous question, said OLED. 12% said Thunderbolt. 12% said HDMI. 7% say TN LCD. So not many people said the TN, the twisted pneumatic liquid crystal display. Most everybody said OLED as the answer, an OLED display for this one. OLED stands for the organic light emitting diode. It's a little different than just LED, which is a light emitting diode. This is an organic version of that. What's nice about this, you can't really see because my head's in the way, but it says that there is an organic compound that emits light when you give an electric voltage, when you give it some type of current, and it lights itself. Think of this as if anyone has ever worked through or gone camping, you see the lightning bugs, the fireflies that are flashing. That is an organic light. It's not a diode, but it's organic light where they're just creating light from chemicals. That's effectively what we have in an OLED. These are very thin because there's no backlight. Normally with an LCD, you have to put a light behind it to be able to see it. What if you didn't need to put any lights behind it? Well, that gets rid of the entire back of your television or display, because now you simply just need the screen. You need the single diode itself, and because that organic compound is providing the light, you don't have to worry about having LED behind it or any type of light behind it to be able to see what's on that screen. And you can probably tell there's more OLED type displays available, especially for mobile devices, smartwatches, your phones, your tablets. We're seeing more of it on laptops these days, not as much as you might expect on a laptop, because laptops were really thinking about battery versus having an accurate color representation. Most people that need that level of color representation and that accuracy have some type of OLED monitor that they are using. So they might be plugging in their laptop to the monitor. And while they're away from that monitor, you have a laptop that is conserving more battery. There's an argument there to be made between how much power OLED uses versus how much power LCD uses, and it goes back and forth as time goes on. So that's a really good question about trying to figure out which one to use. But an OLED, an organic LED, is perfect if you don't have to worry or don't want to worry about any type of backlight. It's also a very, very accurate color display. The blacks are the blackest that you would get. This is why you often see OLEDs promoted or marketed to you on a television, because it provides such a dramatic contrast between blacks and other colors. It's really an amazing screen, and being able to watch and enjoy entertainment on something like that is perfect. not as perfect in a computing environment. There are always pluses and minuses in a computing environment. But in this case, we were just asking which one of these requires a backlight and which one doesn't. So OLED is the only one in this list that does not require a backlight. Some of these technologies don't have a light at all. Thunderbolt doesn't have a light. There's no light there. HDMI is an interface type. There's no lights there to be able to do that. And a TN LCD, a twisted pneumatic liquid crystal display, requires that there's some type of light behind it for you to be able to see what's on the screen. So that would not be the choice either. The best choice, the only choice in this example, is answer A, OLED, and 68% of you got that one absolutely right. Well, we've done a couple of kind of monitor questions. There have been interface questions in here. There's been questions about speeds and feeds and other things. Of course, all of this is in my series of videos. My entire courses are all available for you to watch online for free at any time on the YouTube. You're certainly able to go out and see anything about those. And of course, as you probably saw, I have links to, in fact, we'll go back here at the bottom. You can see that this OLED answer comes from the 2201101 section 1.2, the video named laptop displays. But of course, there's a lot more in the 1101 and 1102 exams. If you were to look at these videos, I think it came out to be like 140 videos total, no, 137 videos total that we have produced in the last couple of months. It has been a interesting time for someone who creates content. This is normal for us, though, where we go through this huge jump of lots of videos being produced and then making them available to you. 19 hours of videos, even more than our previous A+ series. But look at all the different topics that are on these exams: hardware, networking, laptops, printers, operating systems, cloud computing, command line, etc., etc., etc. Goes on and on. Lots to choose from. Well, if you don't have time to go through 137 videos and you don't have time to go through 19 hours of videos, then you might want to get my course notes. These are for the 1101, 57 pages long, and they include all of the text, all the graphics, all the tables, all the things that you want to grab from those videos is in the course notes. There is not only the digital version that you just saw in a delivered in PDF format, there are also physical versions as well. Nice glossy display, full color on the inside. So everything that you have in that PDF is also available to you in this printed version. So if you're trying to find a way that you can get all of this information at a glance in a collapsed, consolidated, accurate form, this is the set of notes for you. This doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace the videos. It doesn't replace hands-on. You've still got to do all the hard work. There are no shortcuts with this, but this is a great study tool, either as you're watching the videos or after you're done with the videos, to be able to reference the information that was in there. They are available on my site. You can find out more. Visit professormesser.com/1101notes. It's also a great way to support the website and keep all of these free videos coming for everybody who's studying for their A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and maybe other certifications as well throughout the years. Coming soon, maybe. We'll have to see. Stay tuned. There's always something going on. Always something going on. So have a look at that. You also keep in mind, I have these also available for the 1001 and 1002. So make sure you get the one that's right for you. Some folks in the chat room were saying they may have gotten the wrong one. Just send me a note. We'll make sure you get the right one. So that you make sure they are, this is an important thing to consider. Let me make this point very clear. If you look at the front of this book, let me bring myself in the screen. The front of this book is the 220-1101. That's the number you're looking for. This means if you are studying for the 1101 exam, this is the book you should use. This is the set of course notes you should have. If you're studying for the 1001, you need the 1001. Make sure that the study materials you have match the version of the exam that you're going to take. That's really, really important because there are differences between these exams. You don't want to be caught studying from something that doesn't match the exam that you're going to go take. So make sure they match. Make sure they're there and they're exactly what you're looking for. Let's do some more questions. I've got more here. Let's do this question that asks, which of the following technologies would most likely be used to manage industrial equipment? Would that be VLAN, proxy, IPS, VPN endpoint, SCADA? Which of the following technologies would be most likely used to manage industrial equipment? Is it VLAN, proxy, IPS, VPN endpoint, or SCADA? Got a few choices there. If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You instead want to visit that link, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. While we're thinking about that, I want to thank Orlando in the chat room with the $20 super chat. Orlando says, thank you for all this. I'm fully A+ certified. Going great. Got a second interview at 1 o'clock today. Oh, we're getting close. All right, is it a Zoom call? Are you there on site? Do you have to dress up? Maybe from the top, from the waist up, you've got the suit on, but you're wearing shorts underneath, that kind of thing. That's 1 o'clock. We all wish you the best of luck with your second interview. You're A+ certified. It's going to go great. You can handle anything they throw at you. So feel free to have a look through those. Hopefully that can get you ready for some of the things you might find on this. Congratulations on your A+ certifications. Congratulations on your second interview. Best of luck with that interview, Orlando. And thank you also for your support with that $20 super chat. We sure appreciate it. This question is one that applies to both the 220-1001 and 1101. So you've got, this is one of those that kind of fits both. Not all questions today are going to do that, but this one certainly does. That might help as you go through. This is, I think, as someone who is kind of looking at both of these exams, they are very similar to each other, but there are some significant differences. So that recommendation I gave you earlier about making sure you have the right version of study materials is really important. There's probably a difference of about 30% on the 1101. 30% of the content is new. About 40% of the 1102 content is new. I think I got those numbers right. I think it's 30 and 40 and not 20 and 30. I think it's 30 and 40. But that's a pretty important thing to keep in mind because so much is different on these newer exams. You don't want to study from things that will never show up on your exam, and you don't want to study from things that are missing what might show up on your exam. So that's why I stress very heavily, very strongly, that you make sure all of your study materials match the version of the exam you're planning to take. This question, let's see how you did. The question asked, which of the following technologies would be most likely used to manage industrial equipment? Would it be VLAN, proxy, IPS, VPN endpoint, or SCADA? Let's see what you're answering. 65% of you, if we go with the majority, say SCADA. We've got 13%, 12% that said VLAN, 10% that said IPS, 8% that said VPN endpoint. I think that's a three-way tie for second. And then lastly, at 3%, a proxy. Nobody chose proxy for this. Sometimes you might see this written as an industrial control system or an ICS, but very often we just refer to it as a supervisory control and data acquisition system, or SCADA. This is one where if you're managing large-scale equipment, you're managing power systems, you're managing manufacturing equipment, you have a manufacturing floor with all of this very specialized, really purpose-built systems, but there has to be some way to manage those systems. There has to be some way to connect and network and view and monitor and see what those systems are doing. And we do that through a set of technologies and protocols known as SCADA. If you want to be able to control these from a central control room, if you want to monitor these 24/7, it's a great way to do it. This is, by the way, the reason that when we started having such a heavy focus on physical security, this was around 2001, we, especially for our power systems, water systems, all of these utility type systems, it became very different for us and how we thought about security in these environments, because if somebody gets control of SCADA or has access to these SCADA management systems, they could effectively run, monitor, or even damage these very important, in some cases critical, infrastructure systems. So you will find, if you work for a power company or any of these utilities or any manufacturing facility or anybody has this type of equipment, you will certainly find that there is an emphasis in keeping all of this on their own segmented and in some cases completely air-gapped network, sort of a security plus term. But what that means is that it's not connected to anything else. It is its own little world. And we have very specific ways in. You have to kind of go over the moat and through the security system to be able to get into the rest of the SCADA systems. And then the only way out is that way out, and then you close the door behind you. So high security if it's something like this, because you don't want someone going in and turning off the power. There are a lot of great stories. You can search on the internet. I mentioned some of these in my Security Plus class where people have gained access to the SCADA network and were able to manipulate, change, modify, and in some cases destroy these systems. And that is an expensive thing to have to replace. So that's a pretty important one to think about. That is the right answer. If you answered SCADA, 67% of you got that one absolutely right. VLANs, a virtual local area network. It's a way to segment networks that are, or segment subnets, really broadcast domains, on a switch. So if you have a single switch, that switch has 24 ports on it, you could split those ports up into their own little networks. So instead of buying 4 separate switches, you can create 4 VLANs and keep that same type of segmentation by using that. VLAN, very common to find in a switched network, but it does not help you manage industrial equipment. It's just a way to segment any switch network. In fact, most switch networks will have some type of VLAN configurations in offices. Usually don't have this at home, usually have it in a work environment. 9% of you said a VPN endpoint. 9% of you said IPS. VPN endpoints, obviously, are the endpoints that are connecting to a virtual private network. Those are the VPNs we tend to use from home these days. So that would not be the right answer for in managing industrial equipment. Instead, that allows us to have a secure encrypted tunnel to another device. An IPS, an intrusion prevention system, is monitoring the network and looking for known vulnerabilities so that it can block those before they get into your network, which everyone should be doing, regardless of your particular type of network. But it does not have anything to do with managing industrial equipment. And lastly, 3% of you said a proxy. Proxies are great for some security features. They used to be very common. They're not common really that much anymore for outbound communication. But for inbound, we still use proxies quite a bit. In fact, if you're visiting ProfessorMesser.com right now, you're communicating through a proxy. You don't even know it. But we're proxying that to you to make the process faster. We can cache information. We can look for vulnerabilities. It makes the experience so much better for you when you're visiting my website. So those are the answers. The one here that really makes the most sense, the only one that really fits, is indeed answer E. SCADA, 68% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another question from the 220-1101. This question asks, an administrator has doubled memory throughput on a desktop computer by adding an additional DIMM. See, this is live. This is what happens when I do these late at night. Which of the following describes this improvement? Is it parity, multi-channel, DDR, ECC, or caching? An administrator has doubled memory throughput on a desktop computer by adding an additional DIMM. Which of the following describes this improvement? Is it parity, multi-channel, DDR, ECC, or caching? Should be one of those. See if you know the answer by locking it in at that link, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to lock it in at that link, or if you're watching this on a replay, make a note. Be looking at those, having it there. Question in the chat room, isn't 1001, 1002 expiring in October? Welcome to the live stream. October 20th, to be precise. The exam is not expiring. The exams are being retired on October 20th. So if you pass your 1001 and 1002 before October 20th, you're certified for 3 years. So trust me, there will be people taking these exams on the last day they're offered, because that's the way we're humans. That's the way we do it. So if you are able to pass both of those exams by October the 20th, you're certified in A+ for 3 years. Now, if you're just getting started, to your point, Philly Rebel, should you just study for the 1101 and 1102? I think if you were just starting today and you were trying to choose which one, I would probably recommend that you take the 1101 and 1102. I think we're pretty much at that time. We're at that tipping point where it's a balancing act. Like there's only 3 months left, so maybe I don't want to to spend 3 months of my life cramming in all of this content only to hit up against that time frame. And then if something goes wrong, all of that work was for nothing. So if you're just starting, Philly Rebel says, I just started studying the 1001 and 1002, I would highly recommend you reset back to the 1101 and 11, or forward. You reset forward to the 1101 and 1102. So, and you can take them now. You don't have to wait. Those exams have been available since April. So absolutely. Please do that. Very useful to know that. So I think that's pretty important. I'll talk more. There's a great question in here about the 1001 and 1002 and operating systems, and I'll talk more about that in the after show because I think that's an important consideration, level 18. Remind me in the after show about that question because that's a good one. Isn't this the same as idle? No, the A+ is actually useful. So that's the big difference. I think if you compare those two, I can talk a lot about idle too. The IT infrastructure library and how pointless that is at our particular level. But managers don't think so. But that's managers for you. Let's see how you did with this question that asked, an administrator has doubled memory throughput on a desktop computer by adding an additional DIMM. That was easy. Which of the following describes this improvement? Is it parity, multi-channel, DDR, ECC, or caching? Let's see how we did. 66% of us say it's multi-channel. We're not quite getting over that 70% number today, are we? 66% say multi-channel. Is that the right answer? We'll find out in a moment. 18%, that's a pretty strong number, say it's DDR. That's the technology that provides us with that additional throughput. We've got 8% said parity, and we've got 7% that said caching, almost a tie for third place. And then last place, ECC, only 2% of you chose that. So that's what the answers were. Multi-channel is what most of you chose, and that's because multi-channel memory, or what you may see written as dual channel, triple channel, quad channel, are memory technologies that effectively allow us to have multiple interfaces on a device that provide us with higher throughput because we can pull and put information into the memory twice as fast if there are two sticks versus having a single memory stick that we're having to write all of that information to. We're effectively just splitting the load onto multiple memory modules. Of course, your motherboard has to be designed to support that splitting of the load. So you have to check your motherboard documentation to see if it supports multi-channel memory. A lot of motherboards will. One way that you could tell very quickly in most cases is to look at the colors on the motherboard. This is a dual channel memory motherboard, and you can see that these are 4 memory slots on the motherboard. 2 of the memory slots are black, 2 of the memory slots are red. And so it's prompting you at the colors that you should use 2 memory modules and make sure that both of those memory modules are in the same colored slot. If you had 2 memory modules on the system, let's say you were putting 16 gig of memory into this motherboard and you had 2 8 gigabit DIMMs, you would not put one on red and one on black. You would not be optimized in that case. You would actually be running slower than you could possibly run. You could effectively double the throughput by putting both of those modules on the red or putting both of those modules in the black. That's pretty important. If you have a motherboard right now, you might want to look at your configuration. You might be able to speed up your system by simply changing where your memory modules are. In fact, it's sometimes frustrating to see manufacturers selling equipment like this where the motherboard supports dual channel, but instead of giving you 2 8 gig sticks, they give you 1 16 gig stick. Like, why would you do that when I need 16 gig? Now, obviously, maybe what you should do is buy another 16 gig stick and put it on that other module. But this should at least allow you to look at how your system might be optimized. So that would be pretty good if you are looking through this. I think this is a good one. Look at those colors, see if it matches what you're looking for. Multi-channel memory is the right answer here. 67% of you chose multi-channel. That is the right answer. Would not be DDR. DDR, or dual data rate, is the type of memory that we are using. The dual data rate is one that describes the type of memory modules that we have on that DIMM. But just DDR doesn't describe the aspect of doubling the memory throughput. It simply describes the type of memory we're installing. 7% of you said caching. Caching is great for having something stored in an area that we can reference later very quickly. Kind of save it off to the side because I might need that data very quickly in just a moment. But caching doesn't double memory throughput. Memory and CPU are constantly talking to each other. It is probably the highest throughput, probably next to video on a number of systems, but it's a very high throughput between the memory and the CPU. The faster you can make the memory and CPU talk to each other, the faster your overall computer is going to be. So caching doesn't provide twice the throughput for memory. There's a physics problem. You actually have to get the data between those two components. And caching simply doesn't provide double the memory. Otherwise, we'd all be doing it, wouldn't we? Does speed things up, but does not double throughput. We've got parity. Parity is certainly a very good way to recognize when errors may be occurring in memory. But parity doesn't increase performance. It simply prevents errors, or at least identifies errors. So that would not be the right answer. And finally, ECC, another type of error-correcting memory. The error-correcting code is one that not only can identify errors, very similar to parity, but it can actually fix them in many cases. That doesn't actually improve performance either. It just makes sure that the system continues to run. So that is not the right answer. The only one that makes any sense here, the one that we were looking for, the way that you would effectively increase, in some cases, double, triple, quadruple throughput is through multi-channel memory. That was answer B. 67% of you got that one absolutely right. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, so let's do one more question, though, because I kind of talked a lot at the beginning of the study group. So let's do one more question before we jump into the after show. This question asks, a cloud question. An administrator is installing an operating system onto a cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SAS, IaaS, VDI, metering, or PaaS? It's got to be one of those, right? An administrator is installing an operating system onto a cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SAS, IaaS, VDI, metering, or PaaS? Do you think you know the answer? Lock your answer in right there at professormesser.com/QA. Lock it in. See if you know. This is another question that, in fact, the cloud section, section 4 of the 220.1101 and the 220.1001 are almost identical. They're so close to being identical, but there are minor changes between them, but they are very similar to each other. So this particular question would absolutely work well for anyone who is trying to study for the cloud base, trying to understand these technologies, figure out where they fit. This is a good one to have here. So see if you happen to know which cloud model this best fits. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. I don't know what the QA is for, but there it is. That's what you should use. I know if you lock in your answer, it is locked in. You can't change it. So that's one you can't do anything about. We'll see how it goes, though. We'll see how you work through this one. I think there's plenty we can do to kind of work through. And then we're not committing you to this. In fact, I don't keep track of who answers what. That's not the point of this. The point is to see how well you can do yourself. And if you think you want to change the answer, change it in your head right now, and I'll accept that. How's that? I think I will allow it in every particular case. This is a study group. We aren't forcing you down a particular road or locking anything in. This isn't going to follow you after we're done. You can get them all wrong. In fact, if you get them wrong, I would probably say that you're learning more on this live stream. So what good is it if you get all of them right? I guess there's at least some validation you can get out of the live stream, but maybe learning something along the way would be helpful too. If you don't watch out, you might learn something. That's how it goes here. Let's see how you did with this question. It asked, an administrator is installing an operating system onto a cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SaaS, IaaS, VDI, metering, or PaaS. Everything is as a service these days, isn't it? Let's see how you did with this cloud-based question. We are really not sure. We are really torn on this one. This is quite a challenge for these because you often get into these questions where cloud-based models are pretty important. So in this case, 37% of you, not a majority, but the plurality of you answered IaaS or infrastructure as a service. 29% of you said SaaS, which is software as a service. You've got 18% said PaaS, which is platform as a service. And then we've got 16% said VDI. 0% said metering. We don't often get 0%. Nobody chose metering on this one. So if anything, we've at least got that ahead of us. So we'll go with the plurality here. 38% of you said IaaS, which, as I mentioned, stands for infrastructure as a service. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as hardware as a service. In fact, it's probably a good place to go to start this. You can think of it as hardware as a service. So if you're someone who you need a machine in the cloud where you could run your own operating system, your own software, and you kind of manage the whole system, but you need the hardware to be somewhere else. You need the hardware to be in the cloud. That's where this is. That's the idea behind infrastructure as a service. It's pretty important to be able to know what level you need with these. In fact, if you go to professormesser.com, those are cloud servers. Those cloud servers are infrastructure as a service because I am responsible for the operating system, for all of the software loaded on that system. All they effectively gave me was, I say all, but it's pretty important, they gave me a CPU, they gave me storage, they gave me a network connection and said, here you go, see what you could do with this and work through it. And the clue with this one is that you were installing the operating system. You were installing effectively everything. So if you go to a web server provider, they're sort of providing you with that infrastructure as a service. If you wanted to think about it in another way, and this is included in my 220.11.01 4.1 cloud models video, that if you had everything in-house, was not a cloud-based service, you've got everything that you've now got to take care of. So you handle the network, the storage, the servers, the virtualization platform, the operating. You install everything. You buy the hardware, you stick it in a rack, you install an operating system from scratch, you install software, you get it all running. And if you do that, it's an on-premises device, or on-prem, as we sometimes will say. If it is infrastructure as a service, then someone else is providing you with the network and the storage and the CPU and everything that you would need at the raw minimum. In some cases, infrastructure as a service even includes the operating system. So these aren't completely static or lines in the sand. Sometimes one or two boxes can be allowed or provided as part of infrastructure as a service. So you don't have to worry about the box, but you do have to worry about the operating system and everything above it. If this is platform as a service, well, now we're given some options to be able to create our own applications. But if you wanted to have somebody handle everything, like software as a service, then everything is provided for you. If you use Google Mail, that's software as a service. You're not writing the code for Google Mail. You're not updating the operating system for Google Mail. You're not doing bug fixes for Google Mail. You just log in. My username and password, wow, there's a mail here. You don't have to do anything else. That's software as a service. If all you're doing is logging in and suddenly an entire service is available for you, that's software as a service. But if you're writing your own applications and you're creating your own middleware or your own app, and you need somebody to at least give you the building blocks of what you need to build your own applications, that's infrastructure. That's platform as a service, which is between infrastructure and software. So you can kind of divide these up as you go. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of context as you're trying to figure out, do I choose infrastructure? Do I use platform? Is it software? Which one of those would I work through? So software as a service, everything's provided. You're not installing an operating system. Platform as a service, a lot is provided, including the programming or application development front end. Don't have to install operating system there. Infrastructure as a service, though, you may be responsible for installing the operating system. And that's why in this case, if you are installing an operating system onto a cloud-based server, that indeed is infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. So we've already seen how that is not software as a service, and it is not platform as a service. We would not be using either of those. VDI, the virtual desktop infrastructure, it is a way to have your desktops in the cloud. Simply connect your desktop through what effectively is a remote desktop connection. And it's a very good way to allow people access to their desktop from wherever they happen to be in the world, from whatever platform they happen to be connecting to or from, to be able to provide access to your desktop. But that's more of a really software as a service. That's more of a SaaS type function, because you don't install the operating systems on those. You don't write the application to provide the VDI functionality. Normally, you're just connecting to a VDI system, and suddenly you have a Windows desktop there, or a Linux desktop, or a Mac OS desktop. That's VDI. And in this case, that's not what we were looking for, because in this case, we were installing an operating system. VDI would not be the case there. You don't install the operating systems VDI. They're just already there in most cases. Metering is a way to monitor and see how much of a particular set of resources you're using in the cloud. That obviously has nothing to do with installing an operating system in the cloud. So the fact that nobody chose metering is actually a good thing. You did very well with that one. In this case, we're trying to install an OS into a cloud server. The only thing this could have been in this list is infrastructure or hardware as a service, and 37% of you chose that one, and that is indeed the correct answer. Well done. Well, that brings us to the end of our Q&A in this first part of the study group. We obviously have much more to go through. Stick around for the after show. In the meantime, let me remind you that everything we talked about today is listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. If you don't have these objectives, you are doing yourself a significant disservice, because they tell you everything you need to know for the exam. Everything. They list out every bullet, every topic, everything. People often ask, what do I need to study? What topics are most important? Well, the topics that are most important are the ones listed in these exam objectives. And that's my answer always, which is go get the exam objectives. That's the way you do it. Go read through them. They are a fantastic list to follow during your studies. They're also a great list or checklist to use before you go into your exam to see if you really have studied the right things. A great sanity check. Have a look at that. There's a link over to the CompTIA website from professormesser.com/objectives, but you could also find it very easily by going to your favorite search engine and typing CompTIA exam objectives. It'll find it straight away. That'll be your first link. You'll be able to identify it very, very easily. Well, as I mentioned, we do an A+ study group every month. We actually do 2 A+ study groups every month. In this case, we have another one coming up in 2 days on July the 14th. Come on back for that one. It's our 1102 study group that we're doing. And then we also have study groups already planned for August. August 2nd and August 4th are the A+ study groups. These times and dates can sometimes change. I really encourage you, if you're planning to join us live, to always check in with the calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar. We also have an events channel in our Discord where I also update and keep all of that so that you know exactly when the next events are going to be at professormesser.com/Discord. Well, we've gone through that first hour of Q&A. Thanks for your time answering those questions, but there's more coming. Now it's time for me to answer your questions in the after show. Stick around for that. Don't forget that if you need some vouchers for your exam, we already have discounted vouchers on the Professor Messer website, professormesser.com/vouchers, that come with the free Exam Hacks ebook. Don't forget about the course notes. I say practice exams here, and I have the old link for the 1001. So if you're still studying for the 1001, we have course notes and practice exams. If you're studying for the 1101, practice exams are in the works. They're coming in the coming weeks. I'll say that. We've got some coming for you there. We've also got the course notes already available for you. So there's plenty of study materials that we're working on right now behind the scenes. I'd be working on them right now if I wasn't talking to you. That's how important they are. So there's a lot going on with creating some additional study materials that can really help you for your A+ studies. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, on Instagram. And if you like this video, it'd be great if you gave us a thumbs up. I know you always hear that from YouTube content creators. That's because YouTube looks at those as an important measurement for how people are enjoying the content that you're creating. It's an easy and free way for you to help support what we're doing here by giving us a like and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for doing that. Well, stick around. We've got more coming. I'm going to answer questions from the chat room. A lot of people are asking questions about the latest version of the certification and, of course, many other things in the after show. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, I'm going to click some buttons. I'm going to push this thing here. It's time for the after show. Oh, I didn't do a super secret code word of the month, did I? If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would be glad to give you a 1-hour webinar category CEU. What you need to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website and click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, please put your name, please put your email address, and in the subject line, please put July 2022 220-1101 A+ study group or something like that, so I know what study group it came from. And then in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of the month, which is, what should we use? I've got, let's put this one here. I've got these from the previous version. Let's do the super secret code word of the month is operating system. Operating system is the super secret code word of the month. Operating system is the super secret code word of the month. Send that to me. I process these study group CEUs usually about every week or so. So I'll be glad to send you a digitally signed email certifying that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. That's the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. Click the Contact Us link, put your name, your email, the subject line, put the July 2022 A+ study group, and then put the super secret code word in the body of the message, operating system. You can also put anything else in there as well. I read through every single one of these, so feel free to have a look at that. Feel comfortable with what's there. A great way to do it. Well, now we're at the part of the show where I stop asking questions, or so many questions, and you start asking questions. I think the first good question already came in, which was, what is that super secret code word of the month? That you can tell I'm out of practice. We had that extra week off because of July 4th. I'll blame that. And we'll just keep it going. Thank you for reminding me, Jeff. That's one that I would have easily forgotten. We've gone right through it till the very end. So that's a good one. So earlier, some folks asked, what's my social security number? Well, I'm not telling you. I will tell you, though, we should all be very protective of our personal information. And I have gone into a number of, for those of you not familiar with my background, I worked many years as a systems engineer for a number of different multi-billion-dollar corporations in Silicon Valley. And part of my job was traveling from site to site, from customer to customer, and talking to them about technologies, about networking, about security, about all kinds of different things. And so a number of customers I would go into would be governmental agencies, not just state and local, but also federal. And there have been some cases where I've gone into a facility, and this one I want to say was not a governmental facility, but it was a company that did a lot of work for the government, for the federal government. And when you checked in, there was a sheet of paper, and on the sheet of paper you had to put your name, your phone number, I think it was, you had to sign it, and you had to put your social security number. And the sheet of paper had a list of everyone's social security number. Now, at this point, you weren't allowed to take pictures in this facility. So that's one where at least people weren't easily able to get a photo of what was on that page, but you could easily look at everybody who had come in. And this is one thing, by the way, if you have a log like that people have to sign in on a physical log, I guarantee you that whoever's signing in is also looking at all of the people that signed in previously. By the way, I absolutely did this every time I signed in because I wanted to see, oh, you've asked us to come in and talk to you about technology. What competitors have already been here? Because in many cases, you have to put the name of the company that you are representing on that login. So I could see, oh, I'm representing Palo Alto Networks. Oh, I can see Checkpoint was here last week. Just before that was Fortinet. So when I walked into the room, I could already say, well, I know you've already looked at Checkpoint Fortinet, so wait until you see this. And they would ask, how'd you know we talked to Checkpoint? Well, because you had it literally, you showed me on my way in. Those sign-in sheets, for some reason, were very, very, it's very common to have that personal and private information there. And so in this particular case, this company wanted you to put your social security number on this page. And I said, well, I'm not going to give you my social security number. That's like a key. That's like opens the door to so many places. I'm not going to put that down. They said, well, that's fine, but you're not going to be allowed in. Okay, well, I do want to go in, so I'm going to put a social security number down. Because they didn't have a way to confirm. It's not like you needed to show your social security card when you walked in the door. They just needed a number there. Okay, so I put a number down. That probably was a social security number, but it wasn't my social security number. And great, here you go. There's your badge. Go on in. So it was one of those. It was one of those security issues where it's, where are you going? Oh, go ahead. You're just asking me where I'm going. I'm going over here. Okay, go ahead. So there have been times where people have wanted me to put my PII, my personally identifiable information, on this piece of paper, and I put something completely different because I didn't want to share that information. And ultimately, there was probably some archaic federal government requirement, or perhaps a requirement that was considered to be a requirement for you to leave your social security number, or it's whoever created the sign-in sheet originally put that on there for whatever reason, and people would just write it down. Here's my social security number. I have no idea why they do that, but there it is. Very common for that to happen. So I appreciate you asking me for my social security number so I can tell you the story of how I probably violated federal law. I don't know. It's the statute of limitations is probably long gone at that point. But that's an example of how I probably would not provide somebody with that information, even if they asked. I get nervous doing these types of things. I recently had to send some private information to a third party via email because that was the only way they had to receive it. And I was sending them really sensitive information that I would not want anyone else to have access to. Except now it's in their email. It's stored in their inbox. It's not encrypted. There was just no way to get this to them. They are running some archaic idea. So I completely expect that the next security breach will probably target me directly because now I've just provided this information to the world. So you work hard at not providing your private information, then you run into situations like that where a very major thing can't happen until you provide somebody with an insecure form of all of your personal data. So we haven't quite figured it out in this country. We're still trying to figure out the best way to make that happen. And maybe it would take just a really good security breach for somebody to realize, hey, we probably shouldn't accept that in an email. You probably shouldn't send your W-2s in an email. Well, I did. So there you go. That's just the way things happen sometimes. Other questions from the chat room. Hey, Professor, not really 1101 related, but if I'm scoring 90% on your practice exams, do you think I'm ready for the 1002? You may have noticed at the beginning of the practice exams book, I list out the number of questions and percentages you should be shooting for to be right. And 90% is certainly a great number. You're ready for the exam if you're getting 90%. Now, don't memorize the questions. If you're getting 90% on these and you're understanding why the question was right and why the other answers were wrong, then that's a good 90% number. But I have had people literally memorize the questions in my practice exams book, take the exam, not do well, and come back to me and say, none of the questions you provided to me were on the exam. Well, that's right, because that would be cheating. That's frowned upon in the security field or in really education in general. No, you don't get the questions. I will give you questions that have a similar style. They certainly contain the same exam objectives as the questions on your exam. But no, I'm not going to provide you with actual exam questions. That is not just unethical. You don't learn anything. What good is that? It doesn't help you at all. So that's why, and I realize, and I look forward to your cards and letters, because people will constantly talk to me about why I am wrong and why it's absolutely ethical, but they're sort of bending themselves into a pretzel to somehow make it appropriate to somehow get their hands on these questions from the exam. If anybody is offering you to provide you with actual questions from the exam, you should absolutely not take them up on that. If CompTIA does find that you had access to any of the actual exam questions, they will reject, they will remove your certification. They will take it away from you, and you will never be able to take a CompTIA certification exam again. Just to let you know, that's the rules. So no, I think 90% though, a great number. And if you really understand the topics and the concepts behind the answers and what was on that exam set, I think you're in pretty good shape. I think it's a pretty good answer. Question on the exam from Wade: why are VGA cables and other old, effectively deprecated hardware formats still being included as need to know in the CompTIA exams? I don't know of anything on the CompTIA exams that are deprecated. There's nothing on there. Effective, especially the 1101 and 1102 exams. They just got released. Everything on there is spot on. And I guarantee you that if you walk into any government, any corporate or government agency, any business, you walk in, there's a device in there connected with VGA. It's not like HDMI comes out and now suddenly all your VGA equipment magically disappears into the ether. You're going to walk into a conference room, there's going to be a VGA connection that you're going to somehow need to know what that is. Now, not in every case. Certainly, a lot of what you find today is HDMI. But the A+ exam is not designed to tell you or train you on all of the technologies that came out in the last 3 months. They're there to give you an overview of technologies that you could very reasonably run into in any type of computing environment. And I guarantee you walk into a data center right now, a large majority of those devices in the data center are connected with VGA because they've been there for years. So of course you need to know VGA. Is it an older technology? It absolutely is. But if you look at it that way, Ethernet is probably the oldest technology you're using. Should you stop using Ethernet? No, it's still used. It's still available. So the hardware that you find on the exam, you will absolutely find hardware in these environments at a company, in a facility that are directly from the exam. It's not unusual at all. So I think that's something to keep in mind. A lot of people just want the latest stuff. Just show me the latest technologies. Why am I learning about these older things? Well, because you're going to run into them. Always, you'll run into them. A good thing to think about. Along the same lines, another question from level 18 talked about, and this is the one from earlier, said on the 1001 and 1002, you have to know about Windows 7 and Windows 8, even though those systems are no longer supported. Well, this is another example of, yes, technically speaking, Microsoft is no longer supporting Windows 7 and Windows 8, at least not to the level that they were. However, you will absolutely still run into Windows 7 and Windows 8 on people's machines, and you will be responsible for probably upgrading them or even supporting them in some cases. So it's another example of how, even though Microsoft isn't selling or even supporting some of those operating systems, you are. So this isn't really about Microsoft. This is about you and knowing what to do when your manager comes to you and says, well, we got a whole batch of Windows 7 devices that were running the specialized hardware, and now they're telling us that we need to upgrade these to Windows 11. Can we do that? Are there device drivers? Will it work with that? How do you test them? How do you upgrade them? What's the process you're going to use? These are all good questions. These are all very valid and very accurate questions and things you may run into. So even though you're taking the 1001 and 1002 and you're going through Windows 7 and Windows 8, and of course Windows 10 is in there as well, you may think to yourself, why am I learning this if Microsoft's not supporting it? Well, you're learning it because you're supporting it. That's the real difference. And you're absolutely going to run into it, by the way. Yes, I know they should have upgraded already. They didn't because of COVID, because of money, because of budget, because of lots of reasons, because of hardware. Maybe there's a hardware requirement. I still know people who are supporting Windows 2000 devices, who are supporting XP in certain environments because it's connected to a piece of hardware that only runs Windows XP, and they never upgraded the hardware. The company went out of business. There are no new device drivers. That's the only thing it runs on, and it's important that that keeps running. Well, how do you manage that? Well, there's a lot of good questions there, and Security Plus kind of talks about that. But you do absolutely run into that. Other question in the chat room, do I have a 220.1102 success bundle? Not yet. I am in the middle of writing and creating the pages to provide 1101 and 1102 success bundles. And so I will absolutely have those available over the next number of days. So it's coming soon. That's one that I am actively working on right now because a lot of people want downloadable audio. They want downloadable video. They want the practice or they want the course notes. They want the other things that come with the success bundle. And we'll even be adding to the success bundle as time goes on. There'll be more things added to it over the next coming months. So getting in now gets you ready for that. In fact, if you buy the success bundle when it's available in a couple of days, tomorrow, today, whenever I get it done, there will be some things I even add on to that if you're a success bundle owner. So I'm working on it. It's a time motion study. For me, it's all physics. How much can I get done during a single day? And that's what I'm working on now. But it's coming along nicely, and I do hope to have that up and running in the next couple of days. Just keep checking back on the website. Success bundles should be there shortly. Andre in the chat room with a £2 super chat. Thank you for that. The question is Exam Compass for quiz, yay or nay, thanks. For those not familiar with the Exam Compass website, it's a series of questions that allegedly are associated with the A+ exams. They have been increasingly outdated as the years have gone on. They are not questions that are posed in a way that accurately reflects the style that you will find on the exam. In some cases, some of them are just wrong. I get a lot of emails from people saying, why is this question seem like it's wrong? And I can't answer them because there's so many wrong ones. I'd spend all day telling you why all their questions are wrong, or why some of their questions are wrong. So they're just not well curated. I don't recommend them. Some people find some value with them, and maybe, one of the values is that they're free. Well, part of the problem is that they're free, I think. Sometimes free stuff is good. Sometimes free stuff isn't good. You can make a decision on whether this particular free stuff is good or not. I think I've already made my decision on that. It's really about finding something that is accurate, and the accuracy is the problem. Find something that's really going to help you study, not something that is going to ask you questions that don't apply, that are outdated, that apply to other older versions of the exam. I don't know why they just don't update them, but they don't. So that's one of those things that happens. Other questions from the chat room. Let's see. SCSI. Some people said, okay, here's one on the exam. SCSI is legacy technology, isn't it? Haha, I found one. Actually, the primary connectivity for storage, probably the majority connectivity for storage used today is SCSI. In fact, if you're running anything in a VM, it's probably using SCSI protocols to communicate via storage. In fact, if you look at the VM configuration for storage, it probably shows that it's connected to a SCSI bus, because SCSI is such a well-established and very powerful protocol for accessing storage devices that it simply makes sense to use that in virtual environments. So if you have a cloud-based infrastructure, and who doesn't, connectivity via SCSI. And I realize it's a virtual SCSI. It's the protocol being used behind the scenes communicating to the storage, but it is the most used protocol for storage today by far. So can you call that legacy? If we're actively building new SCSI connections today, I think not. I say not, sir. I say that it's probably one of the most. Now, the part that I think probably is legacy is if you look at the exam objectives, it talks about physical SCSI interfaces. And I'm seeing a decreasing amount of physical connectivity in SCSI and an increasing number of virtual. But again, if you walk into any data center, you're going to find SATA, yes. You're going to find lots of SCSI. You're probably going to find some PATA in there as well. So can you really call it legacy if you have active systems that are currently using these technologies in your existing data center? This is the problem, isn't it? Is that we have to keep adding on more and more technologies because we aren't removing them. Now, that's one of the problems I think the latest A+ is fixed. If you look at the exam objectives for the 1101 and the 1102, especially the 1101, the 1001, for those of you taking that one, you know there seems to be a lot of rote memorization in the 1001. If you look at the 1101, there's still some rote memorization because you still need to memorize some of these statistics. They're extremely important, but there's less to memorize. There's less rote memorization. They got rid of a lot of things in the 1101. In fact, there are fewer exam objectives in the 1101 than the 1001. There's less you have to know. Who would have expected that on a newer version of the exam? But it's true. So they are trying to better fit a more focused perspective of things you will actually find running today versus older technologies that you probably won't run into, or things that you might find maybe in a home environment that you probably wouldn't find in a work environment. I didn't go through and specifically build out things we dropped from the 1101. Probably should do that just because I think it'd be interesting to see whether it is or not. Whether it was dropped or not. It'd be interesting to see what specific topics are no longer there. I'm running into a number of these with the 1102, and it's very easy to pick those out. But that's a good example. I'm working through them of how some of those topics could certainly be one that's good to know about. They could be dropping it, and you need to. That's why I tell people make sure you study from study materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take, is because they drop and add all kinds of different things, and you have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb to know what those things are, which I do. I know all of the things that were added to the 1101 because I have to build out new content for those. But a lot was dropped as well, which I think is nice. They really did focus. They created a very narrow focus on the current A+ exam, and I think it was helpful for a lot of people because of those reasons. Do I think 1 year tech, JM in the chat room, do I think a 1 year tech support experience in addition to A+ certification boosts my chances on landing a higher paying job? I think anything you do to better yourself, whether it's your own personal knowledge, it's working on other projects, it's getting more industry certifications, all of this helps you get more money, what I sometimes call leveling up in IT. IT has a lot of leveling up that you do throughout the years. You kind of start at the bottom. Think of the help desk as sort of that starting point. My first job out of college wasn't even help desk yet. It was a field service technician. So that field service job that I got was hopping in a car every day and traveling to customer sites to install a printer, to replace or install a storage drive, to update the memory. You know, I had to go on site and physically install or replace or fix whatever was out there. Being in the field for 9 months and doing that got me very familiar with the hardware. And so, and in some cases, the operating systems. And I was able to leverage that into my next level up was to a help desk. I leveled up to a help desk. I started in the fields of IT. And I could say this because my very first job was literally in the fields. I worked in agriculture. I worked in the fields. They picked me up in the morning. I'd get in the back of the truck. They'd drive me to the field. They'd hand me a hoe, and I would get rid of the weeds. That was my first job, my first real job. And so I sort of did the IT version of that, where I get in my car, I travel out to the people, I do the hardware thing, and it's arduous. You're in traffic. You're trying to get from one site to the other. Faster you can get done, the faster you can be finished for the day. There was just, it was a very challenging role. And it was in South Florida, travel in South Florida, not always the easiest. But then I was able to upgrade that to level up into a help desk position. At the help desk, I learned more about Microsoft Windows. I learned about networking. I learned about sort of desktop support and really understanding how to support the desktop in these systems, which allowed me to level up to the server team. See how that worked? So I went from field to really a workstation level help desk, password resets, that kind of thing, leveled up into servers, leveled up from there into networking, leveled up from there into security. So it's always a step up. Anything you can do to get you there. And I've often mentioned in these study groups that it's not one thing. It's not just certifications. People will constantly say, and I would argue incorrectly, they will tell you that experience, it is the priority. It trumps all other things. And in some cases that can be true, but that is rarely the case. It is almost always a combination of things. It doesn't help you having somebody very experienced who has no ability to work with others. It doesn't help anybody. Or they have a lot of experience with one thing, but they don't have a lot of experience with something else. Well, how do you measure that? You can't. There's no way to really give a quantitative value. It's all qualitative. So it's really a combination of things. Employers would like a well-rounded set of experiences. Is experience important? Of course it is. Are certifications important? Yes, they are. Is your formal education important? Yes, it is. So you can't discount any one of those, and you can't tell someone that one thing has a better priority than another because every employer is different. Every employer is looking for a different combination of things, and every employer has a different idea of what the best priorities are. So I think what people say when they're saying experience trumps everything, I think what they're saying is that experience is important. And they're sort of giving it the wrong type of emphasis, I think. I think they think that it really does reign supreme, but in reality, there are some employers that don't want you to have experience. They want to teach you on the job because they know that they can hire you for less money if you don't have experience. So two people walking in for the same job in that scenario, the one without experience is actually the one that will get hired. And that is a real world, honest view of how some employers hire. Other employers don't want to go through that process. They don't want to train somebody. They need somebody running on the first day, that are taking charge on the first day. Well, in that case, maybe experience is more important. But it depends on the employer. You can't really make these very broad, large perspective views of the world because it does run into these situations where I think that if you are someone who is working towards getting a job at those places, you need to find out what they're looking for. Do they want experience? Do they want certifications? Do they want a combination of these things? Do they want somebody who has good communication skills? Are there no communication skills on this? It just depends. So I think that really makes a lot of sense if you're getting into this. Other questions. So let's see what else we have here. Other questions coming in. I will also mention to you as you go through the exam objectives. I think the exam objectives are really the best thing you should grab to know what you should be studying. This is interesting. Folks who are taking the 1101 and 1102, you know that it focuses on Windows 10 and Windows 11. I'm not sure what the pushback has been on Windows 11. Windows 11 has been working very well. It's really just Windows 10 with another UI. There's not much difference between the two, which is really weird. Maybe it's just the change. People don't like change, period, of any kind, whether good or bad. They just don't like change. And so when we went from Windows 10 to Windows 11 and the user interface was so functionally different, but not dramatically different, there were differences in the UI. It made people crazy, made them a little bit, we're not touching that because it's different. But there was really no other reason for not touching that. Were there bugs at the beginning? Yes. There's always bugs at the beginning of an operating system. But none of them seemed to be critical or showstoppers. It wasn't like Windows 8. Windows 8 came out. It introduced that Windows desktop, the secure desktop, and it stopped everything and prompted you to say, wait a second, do you really want to install this software? And it was a little overboard. But the intentions were good. The intentions were to prevent these security problems that were rampant with Windows. And in some cases, it did actually work for many of those problems. People sure didn't like the change, though, and it gave that operating system a very bad name. Now, it turns out it was super buggy in Windows 8. 8.1 was solid. It worked great. I ran Windows 8.1 for years, but it was tainted. It was one where people didn't like it. It was not good. The smell was there from Windows 8, and they didn't like that, so they weren't going to use 8.1 regardless of how good it was, which is why they came out with Windows 10. And everybody jumped on that as if it was the answer to everything. And I guess it was, because it had a different number associated with it, and everybody went with that. So I think learning the Windows 10, Windows 11 right now, the thing I mentioned that my organization in the UK still uses Windows 10, will not upgrade to 11. Well, it's fine. Windows 10 is still supported. You can still run it until it's tried and tested because of security and part of the government. Well, that's reasonable. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think you'll find a lot of Windows 11 heavily implemented until about a year goes by, and then organizations begin implementing because they let other people work through the security issues or whatever it happens to be, whatever those problems are. But it seems to be a very solid operating system. It's working well. It's very compatible with Windows 10. There's not much problem there. I think in about a year, you'll see a lot of people putting in Windows 11. It's fine. If I was to buy a new machine right now, I'd get Windows 11. In fact, I'm looking at getting a new machine that is a Windows 11 machine, and I'm fine with that. I might as well put the latest stuff on it. But I'm using it for home. I'm not using it for business. I'm not worried about the security in a domain environment. There's a lot of concerns. There's absolutely valid reasons you would not want to go to Windows 11 in a corporate environment until it's well tested, until you're comfortable with the operating system, until you got the support in place. There's all those things. And there are differences in the UI. There's differences on where some of these utilities are located, and you'll see that in my 1102 course. So it's reasonable. I think it's fine. But that's every organization's different. So that makes sense to me. Let's see. Question from Kurt in the chat room. I did my Core 2 exam today. I was one question from finishing, and my exam was revoked for technical issues. Must have been you were doing this at home, I'm guessing. I've been given a pass report, the same as my Core 1. So did I pass even if it was revoked? If you log into Pearson VUE and it shows a pass, yes, you passed. Even though they revoked it, yes, you passed. Yes, you're A+ certified. I'm happy to tell you. So yes, congratulations, Kurt. You are A+ certified. You're locked in. Even though this thing happened, and they don't really revoke the exam, they stop the exam. I know they call it a revocation, but it's technically not a revocation. They just stopped it where you were. They sort of froze it in time, and whatever it ends up being at that point is your score. And as long as there wasn't an actual breach, as long as you weren't really doing something that was violating the integrity of the exam, they let it stay, and in about 24 hours, they lock it in, and you see it's, instead of pending, it says passed. And if it says passed online, you passed. You're A+ certified. Congratulations. How easy was that? I love it. I love those questions. Like being able to say that. Chris in the chat room, I'm going through a certification program for Network Plus. The material for the 007 course, are there big differences between that and the 008 exam? Yes, there is. Do not use 007 study materials if you're taking, well, because you are taking the 008 exam. You should be studying from 008 materials. I don't think I've mentioned this already, but you should really be studying from exam materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take. That is my mantra. That is a pretty important one. So I especially like the question in the chat room. Is this live? Is this live as of 12 July 2022? Well, unless you typed that in last week, yes, we're live. If you're watching right now at, what time is it? At 1:50 p.m. Eastern time on the 12th. We're doing pretty well here. Let's see what else. Are the practice exam questions in the book? I'm assuming you're referring to my practice exams book. more close to the actual exam questions. This would be obviously for the 1001 and 1002 because I haven't finished the practice exams for the 1101 and 1102 yet. But I've designed my practice exams book, and this is the way the 1101 and 1102 will be designed, to have a similar feel to the style of questions that are asked on the exam. They are all original questions. I write all of the questions in my practice exams book myself. I don't farm it out. I don't have other people write them for me. I write them all myself. So I'm able to write them with the same, I don't know what you call it, the same voice, the same cadence, the same structure as what you might find on questions on the exam. But they are different questions than the exam. Intentionally, I don't want to give you questions from the exam, but there's a certain style that you often see on the exam. A set of 2 or 3 sentences. They kind of have a scenario. Here's what you're trying to do. Which one of these would be the best way to do it? That's sort of a similar style in the exam. You see a lot of questions like that. Bob is trying to upgrade a thing. He wants to be sure it does this. Therefore, which one of these would be the best choice? A, B, or C, or D? You know, that's a common thing. So you'll see a lot of my questions have that same structure. So when you take the exam, although they are original questions on the exam that you've never seen before, the style and the thought process and the structure, the way you read through the questions should be very similar to what you've already seen in my practice exams book. Hopefully that will remain that way. We don't know. The exam might change dramatically a year from now. We don't know. But I at least know that the questions in that book are questions that can really help you learn the material. And that's the purpose of writing the questions that way. Question in the chat room from Dom, who says, will the videos for the 22011 and 1102 be enough to pass the exams? Oh, Dom, there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. Everything in my video course is written specifically to the list of exam objectives. So every objective in the list is covered in the videos. That's the point of those videos, is to give you information about every single bullet from that set of exam objectives. But as I also mentioned in the very first video of the course, your best bet is to have a good book, watch the videos, get some good Q&A, get plenty of hands-on. Those are the four things. I can't keep the finger. There's 4 things that you should have. Those are the 4 things. Could you get away with just watching the videos and pass the exam? Some people have. If you already have a knowledge in the industry and you just needed to really focus on what's on the exam, the videos are probably perfect for that. They watch the videos, they go take the exam, they pass, and they're done. But I would say for the vast majority of people, you would want to have multiple types of training materials because each one of them teaches you in a different way. It fires different synapses. It's a different style of learning. In the case of labs, it's more muscle memory. A book provides much more detail than a video ever could. A video provides you a visual demonstration that a book can't. So you can see there's advantages and disadvantages to every single one of those types of training systems. So you need more than those. You need every possible one of those 4 categories as you can get. And I think you'd be in pretty good shape. But there's never a case where any one thing is the best way to do that. So I think keep working through those. The way that it is structured and the way that these training materials are created are really, most of them do follow the objectives. Even if they're not in the same order, they all have the objectives inside of them. So great question from in the chat room. When will the 1101 practice questions come out? As soon as I write them, brother. As soon as they're done. My standard answer to that, in the coming weeks. I don't know. It's as soon as I get them finished. I am working very, very hard to get them done to be able to make that happen. So, are there big differences between the A+ 220 1001 and 1101? Can we use the 1001 videos to study for the 1101? No, you shouldn't. Use the 1101 videos to study for the 1101. You should always use study materials that match the version of the exam that you're planning to take. I should just have a lower third that pops up that just says that. Should be part of my frequently asked questions. because do not go back to older versions thinking, oh, this will give me more context or allow me more information. It doesn't. It doesn't. Every exam's different. Every exam has a different focus. Every exam has a different set of objectives. Only study from materials that match the version of the exam that you're taking. I have already published an 1101 video course and an 1102 video course. They are available for you. They are complete. They cover every topic from the exam objectives. Those are the ones you should study from when you're ready to do that. Make sure they match. Make sure they match. Will there be any select 2 answers questions on the A+ exam? Sure. Yeah. And most of the time they tell you how many. They will tell you in the question, select blah, 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 pick 2. Select 2, select 3, and they'll tell you how many you should be choosing. They don't tend to say, pick all that apply. They don't do that because that's just awful. Whoever does questions like that, I'm looking at you. The people that write those questions, you're bad people. You're evil. You're wrong. Shouldn't do that. It should tell you, for a question, select 1, select 2, select 3. It will tell you how many you need to select. But there can certainly be questions that ask you that. So that's one. What books would I recommend? Well, on the Professor Messer website, I have a list of recommended materials. In fact, I'll go to professormesser.com right now. I think I've got, here we go. Got this up. So if we go to 1101, notice I have a lot of links here on the top. 1001, 1002, 1101, 1102. This will all get really cleaned up in October, won't it? But under the 1101 and 1102, there are study recommendations. Oh, thank you for the advertising, Google. But if you go to the study recommendations, my course notes, of course, I recommend those. Here's the books that I recommend. They are the CompTIA study guides, because some of you have been with me a long time, know that I used to recommend the GTS learning books. They were written by people who knew what they were doing. They were very comprehensive. And I like the people who worked there. It was a really good group of folks. Well, GTS Learning was acquired by CompTIA. So they're now CompTIA, and the books that you get from CompTIA are written by the same people who was writing the GTS Learning books for the most part. So I like their books. I like the style. I like the structure. I like the way they provide comprehensive perspectives of those. So this is a good example of how those are the books that I recommend, not only because I like the author and I like the books, but on my site, if you buy those books, you get my course notes for free. I need to update my course notes image because it's showing the 1001 and 1002. Put that on my list, Lori. That's, but that you get the 1001 and the 1101 and 1102 books when you get that, or whatever you get the associated course notes that go along with that. So I have similar bundles for the labs. Well, it's interesting. The Core 1 labs are actually a 3D sort of build your PC sort of lab, where you pick up and you move things with your mouse. You unscrew the back of the screen, you move it off, you pull the memory out, you put it in. It's very interactive. I like them. And the 1102 is a VM. It's really a nice, well configured virtual environment. You're working in Windows 10, you're working in Windows 11. Those are the ones I recommend. There's also practice test packs. So if you don't want to wait for my practice exams, I have some on the site now from CompTIA, and eventually that'll include and bundle with the practice exams too. So that's where I would start looking at those. My videos, my course notes, and all my study recommendations are on the website. Those labs are pretty cool. They're pretty awesome. Maybe I'll bring these up as we're talking and thinking about this. They don't work in Safari. They work fine in Chrome though. So I'll bring them up in Chrome so you can get a perspective of that. Should be in here anyway. Go to login.comptia.org. Go to one login now, which is kind of important and useful for being able to do that. I just need to figure out and remember my login. It's good to have this. Is it reasonable to think at age 46 that I can change my career from being a letter carrier to going into IT and being successful? First, as I mentioned before, the computers have no idea how old you are. This is personally a fantastic benefit. I love that that's the case. However, the people you're interviewing with do know how old you are, or they make assumptions about how old you happen to be. This is a bit of a challenge for someone who's trying to change and move into a different world, a different area, a different vertical market, if you will, because people will look at you and go, oh, I don't want to hire the old guy for this. Maybe it's not going to be, there's ageism is an enormous concern. So whenever I talk to somebody who's transitioning from one vertical market to another, you were in transportation, you were in a government, you were doing manufacturing, you're doing some other job, now you want to get into IT. And you've already been through one career. You've already done the first career. Now you want the second career. I would highly recommend you start marketing yourself to people you know. And this applies also to people who are new to the industry too. Networking with people is so important. Having a LinkedIn where you can keep track of the people you've worked with people who are in the industry is so valuable. There have been a number of people I have worked with and I connect to people on LinkedIn that I have personally worked with in the industry. And when I see a job that's good for them, or I have something has popped up where they'd be perfect for that, I send them a note and say, whether it's somebody I'm currently working for is hiring and this would be a great job for you, but I keep them up to date with what's going on. And that is how we sort of keep the networking side of it going. I have a better chance of hiring someone I know than someone I don't. So if you know people who are in IT, you should already start reaching out to them and say, hey, I'm looking to get into IT. Do you think in your organization there's a position that might be good for me? And they might have some pull with the IT people and they go, oh yeah, even though they're in accounting, they might be in marketing, they might be in some other part, they may not even be in IT, but they go, yeah, I know the IT guy. Send me your resume. I'll put it on his desk. I'll show it to him. I'll send him a note. So use those connections. People want to see their friends succeed. So use those connections, even though, and maybe you could go in cold to an entry-level position and get it at your current age, and it's not a big deal. You'll find somebody who hires based on merit, and that's great. But also recognize that that's not always the case, and you should be talking to people in maybe you go to church and there's a church group. Maybe there's a organization you're part of. Maybe you know people who are your neighbors who work with these companies. Go talk to them. Find out if they know anything, because those can be very valuable connections that can really, really help you, along with all the other things we have to worry about. We now have to worry about how old we are. It's sort of I want to blame it on human nature, but I also want to make people aware that you have to work outside the scope of that. So go beyond just providing a resume. Find a way to get in with people you know and people you can trust. The Philly Rebel says, you purchased my 1001 notes and exams on Saturday. Didn't know about the 1101, 1102, but now you want to do the 1101, send me a note. We'll figure out a way to get you the things you need to be able, the resources you need to be able to pass the exams. It's going to be important. If you have the notes already, do you get a discount if you want to get those books? Because I mentioned the books come with my course notes. Yes, you do get a discount for the full cost of the notes, discounted the cost of the notes. Just send me, open up a ticket in your member login and tell me that's what you'd like to do, and I'll send you a coupon to be able to get that at the discounted price. So you're effectively not buying the course notes twice. Think of it that way. You're buying them once. You still have to buy them, but you don't have to pay for them twice, which I think would be useful too. Here's the labs. I've got the labs up and running. This is a lab to install a motherboard. Do we want lab mode? Do we want tutorial, explore mode, assisted mode? Let's do explore mode. So here's our lab. We can zoom in. We see the back of the device. Oh, look up here on the desk. It's like I have some thermal paste. I'm plugging it into the wall. Here's some tablets, and here's the inside of the machine. Can I 3D this? I think I can. Come in the other side. Is it shift? Oh, look, it's not even plugged in. Good job. And so you can work inside the case and around it. I know my screen is not that great because I've got very low frame rates because I'm on a mirrored connection on a 3.5-year-old iMac. But this is exactly what you can do. You can even explode the view, see what's there. There's a lot of stuff inside of it. Assemble it up. And then they've got labs where it physically tells you, okay, put the memory in the system, and all the memory's out here, and you have to pick it up and put it in the right slots in the motherboard, or it won't go in there the proper way. So there's the memory inside. There's a CPU cooler. I mean, that's a motherboard. That is graphically exactly what you would find on an actual motherboard, except you don't need one. You can work in this virtual environment. They've also got different, what are the controls here? So you can zoom, rotate. Oh, it's the right drag to rotate through. So we can rotate around the box. We can see what's inside. We can get an idea. Oh, that's nice. Okay. And then the labs themselves have a lot of different options that you go through. It steps you through all of the pieces of that. It's kind of fun to be able to work with that. The 1102 lab is more of a virtualized environment where you're actually working with the operating systems. So if you don't have Windows 10 or Windows 11, it's okay. They have it. And you can work through it, and you're not going to mess up anything that's on your machine because you're working in this virtualized environment. So we'll have to see. Let's see. I purchased the practice exams from you. I was currently studying. Can I retake them? Are they single use? Well, I guess it depends on which practice exams you got. If you purchase my practice exam book, it's a PDF, so you can go through it as many times as you like. If you get the CompTIA Cert Master Practice, which are also available on my site, those, once you finish up a section and you get all of the questions right, you can click a button and reset it and start fresh again with any of those sections. So yes, you can go through them as many times as you want, over and over and over and over again. So that's a nice thing to have. But you have to finish it. And one of the things on the practice, for those of you that haven't used CertMaster Practice before, you go through the questions, and then it doesn't let you finish that section until you get all the questions right. And so you have to go through it, and then whatever you got wrong, it starts asking you those questions again. And then finally, you whittle down and whittle down, and finally you get them all right, and you can go to the next section. At that point, you're able to reset and do all of that. In the chat room, Natch with the $20 super chat says, hey, PM, wanted to say thank you for all the resources you provide. Went through career change due to the pandemic. Happy to say I'm sitting here at my new help desk job. Cheers. I'm interested to know, Natch, what career you were in and where you managed to find the help desk. Was it in the same market? This is something I also tell people who have worked in this area for a long time, and this might apply to the question we had earlier of someone who was a postal carrier wanting to move in IT. Well, you know, the post office and really local and state and federal government has extensive jobs available. There's a way that you could leverage your existing knowledge to be able to use that in IT. I get that a lot from people who are in healthcare, and they say, I want to get into IT. So, well, good, because hospitals need good IT people, and who knows the hospital better than somebody who already works there? Plus, you're already an employee. It's a little more apt to move you into an area like that. So that's a good example of that. So somebody in the chat room was mentioning, yeah, the PC building sim. That's similar to the PC building sim that you might get from Steam, or you can buy it standalone as well. And I have that as well. I have the PC building simulator program because it's kind of fun. You're right. It's a similar style with the graphics, the 3D, and you can swap things out and change it around. And it is a nice application, but it doesn't have CompTIA specific questions. This one does. So I didn't show this before. In fact, let's pop out sort of to the main screen of this. I think I can bring it back to the main screen. So all the labs that are in this, upgrade, install GPU, daisy chain monitors, install a motherboard, install power supplies with cooling, install SSD storage, install RAM, CPU and a cooler, explore the VM lab environment, compare networking hardware, network technologies, configure a Soho router. Here's one I didn't have before. Let's start that lab up. Yep, we can launch this. You can cancel the old one. You can only do one lab at a time, and I had that other one up, so it's going to love. So this one, Oh, is this the install motherboard? Did I just restart the same one? I think I did. I'll load up the other one. We can see what it looks like. But you're right. It's very similar to that. Natch says, I was a professional musician in, I don't know if that's Canada or California. Public gatherings got banned, so I was out of work. Yep. Moved to NM, New Mexico, so it must be California. Lots of IT work in New Mexico. I'm thinking that's what that is. Hardest part was writing a proper resume to show the comparable skills. Yeah, that's a difficult one. How do you take professional musician and leverage that into IT? That's not quite as a direct one, although I will tell you there's a lot of companies dealing with music, dealing with music retail that need good IT people. So that's another good example where you could possibly leverage that or work with a developer or a company that makes hardware and software that interacts with music. You know, all of the USB connected audio interfaces, music software. I mean, there's great opportunities there for IT and support jobs. But generally speaking, yeah, I would imagine if you were a professional musician, there's a social aspect to that that would really help you in IT because you talk to people all the time in music. You're constantly interacting. You're, in fact, even more so than probably other places because you're not just communicating with people interactively. There's an emotional communication that's taking place. I would think that would allow an empathy that perhaps may be difficult for others who haven't gone through or thought about that from a creative perspective. I'm not very creative musically. I used to play piano for weddings. So I functionally can play a piano. I can look at a sheet of paper and play that music, but I can't, it's hard for me to make that emotional contact with the music. But somebody who has might have they might be better on the phone than I am when dealing with technical problems. You know, that can help. Makes a lot of sense to me. I want to leave my current job at 35. Is it too old to learn? Thankfully not, because I'm not 35. I also get experience without being on a low wage. The wage part is the difficult part. Having an existing career and then transitioning into IT usually means you're now starting at the bottom where you now have to level up. Starting at the bottom generally means you're making less. And I think that's where a lot of people get trapped in the idea of this is that you're starting at the bottom and people start making comparisons and saying, I could make more doing this. I can make more as a bartender than I make working at a help desk. And you probably could. You're probably pretty easily can make more money as a bartender than being at a help desk position for the first year. But your upward mobility in IT happens so relatively quickly compared to other industries. And it happens, not just happens quickly, but there's always a way to move up. There's always upward mobility. It's very difficult to hit the higher levels within this. I don't know if I want to share exactly what this is, but I was looking at W-2s this week because of other things that were going on. And I was looking at one from 10 years ago. I was working for a manufacturer of in cybersecurity, working for a next generation firewall company. And I made in that year, 10 years ago, it was a six-figure salary. It was multiple six figures. It was 2 6 figures. It was like 200,000 a year. That year it was a banner year. There were a lot of commissions and there was a lot of bonuses, and it wasn't like that every year. But it just showed that after a career in IT, that I was able to work up to a level where there were some significant financial benefits from working up to that level. It's not too hard to get that 100,000 a year in IT. We talk about it all the time. Your other people talk about it all the time. You get that six-figure salary. Get that six-figure salary in IT. And that particular year was a blowout. Like we just, and trust me, it's all gone. As it turns out, it's all disappeared. But it's all saved away into a retirement fund. Maybe some of it is. The idea though is that I could have moved up from there. There are ways to go higher from that point. So yes, that first year you probably will be making less than a bartender. The second year, probably not, because your next jump up is going to be a significant jump because the money is there. And so I say this all the time on these study groups. The reason I make these courses, the reason I do the live streams, the reason we do all of this is for you to get that job or get the better job, because I know the process that it takes to start at the very bottom in this industry and work your way up into a significant salary. I know there's a path for you. I know there is a direction that will get you there, and you will end up making more money than you thought was even possible in this industry because it's there for the taking. As long as you're willing to work for it, as long as you put in the time and the effort and the study. None of this was a 9 to 5. It's always about learning. It's always about studying. It's always about finding out more information, always about finding a niche and understanding that niche and being the expert in that niche. That's what you need to do, because if you do that, you will quickly level up in this industry and keep leveling up. And there will be money for you and your family and a comfort level from a financial perspective that perhaps you're not even aware of. And the people that tell me about that, who say, well, I'm just going to be a bartender, they've missed that connection. And I try to tell them, no, stick it out for a year. You will be amazed what your next step up is going to be. How do you make sure that your salary is increasing? Well, that's the real question in any job, a question. So the way that it works in IT, the way that it works generally with every company is there are certain upward mobilities within a company that you can take. Generally, that upward mobility is one that provides you with a percentage increase in your salary, but often does not represent the potential increase in your salary that could be found somewhere else. So we often talk in IT about sort of the 3-year jump. Like you stay in one organization for 3 years, and at that point, you've sort of tapped out what HR is willing to give you in a salary because you look over at the same job somewhere else and they're paying more money. Okay, well, I'm going to go somewhere else. And then you go to another company. I think in my career, I've talked about, I've probably worked 15 different titles, different jobs in this industry. Some of those are titles where I stayed in the same company and I worked from help desk 1 to help desk 2. Or I went from help desk 2 to desktop management, desktop administration. You know, that's a jump, but I stayed with the same company. My desk was in the same place. Nothing changed. I went to the same place to work every day. I just got a different job. So I went through about 15 of those in my career. And I would say I worked for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 or 7 different companies throughout my career. So in IT, it's not uncommon to move from one company to the other because you're taking such an increase in pay when you make that jump outside of the company. And so that's why I mentioned that, is that it's a great time. Oh, there was actually maybe another company. And there are times when you make that jump, at least in my career, well, I've made the wrong decision and jumped to a job that was the wrong job in another company. It wasn't an increase in pay. Yes, it was. Was it a good job to be in? No, it was not. And it ended up being a short job and I didn't go somewhere else. That's not the best possible thing you can do, but that's the world. That's the way it works sometimes. So I think there is this way to move up in this industry, but sometimes it requires you to move to a different company. You have to be ready for that when you do that. You have to be ready to go to a different company. Although I've worked with some people that have been in the same organization for 10 years. My last job with the Next Generation Firewall company, I was there 7 years. That's an amazing amount of time in one company in IT, but it was such a good job. It was such a good company. it was a unique situation. And I stayed there a long time because it was worth staying there a long time. This is the challenge. And I know in the chat rooms even mentioning this, I'm talking a lot about money as if that's the only thing in the world. It obviously is not. There is this thing of work balance. There is this thing of not being on call 24/7. There's different IT jobs for different requirements, and you need to find the IT job that has the right balance for you. I was working in an environment where I was a systems engineer. I was a pre-sales systems engineer. That's effectively a sales job, but you're technical. You effectively, they tell the customer, this product is amazing. Show them how amazing it is. And my job was to show them how amazing it is. So you have this very technical position where you have to kind of work on the fly in real time with real networks and real people and real security concerns. So that's a good example of, you got to be really knowledgeable with a lot of different things to walk in cold to a company, install a technology, and make it dance. And so they're hiring people that have those skills and have that knowledge. And the only way you would get there is to accumulate that knowledge over time. Now, that was a great job because it was effectively 9 to 5. It was working hours. I was not on call, but there was a ton of travel. I would leave on a Monday. I would fly around. I would come back on a Friday. So I didn't see my family throughout the week. For some people, that's great. For me, it wasn't. I liked being around my family. So it was nice to be able, after 7 years, to not do that anymore. But now you get to make that decision for yourself. And there are jobs everywhere where there are options. I was talking with someone, one of those customers I went in to see, who was working for state. No, it was a hospital environment. It was a hospital. And he had been there 10 years, but he was sharp. He knew his stuff. He could work anywhere. You know, you work with some people sometimes, they sit down at the keyboard and they go, and they just, boom, they got it cold. They know the technology. They can talk to you at a very high level or very low level. He knew his stuff. And I said, you know, you could work anywhere. You've been here 10 years. It's probably, you know, there's probably a job out there where you could even make more money. He said, yeah, but here I have complete flexibility over my schedule. This gives me an opportunity. I have things at home that flexibility is incredibly valuable to me. It's worth more to me to be here where they can work with me on my schedule and what I want to do in my life. And then I still have this life to go to. If I go to a different job, I'm not going to have that flexibility. And I thought that's a perfect example of that balancing act where you get to make those decisions at that point. Do you want to make more money? Do you want more flexibility? You get to decide, but the only way you get to decide that is spending the time to level up, where now you finally have that level of autonomy, which you normally don't have on a help desk. On a help desk, there are how many tickets did you close on the first call? How much time are you spending on every ticket? What was the satisfaction level of the people that you talked with? There are some very specific metrics they like to put on you at that level. And it's almost overwhelming until you realize, well, you're going to grow out of this. You're going to learn all of this, be very knowledgeable, and then you need to level up to the next piece of it. So that's, I don't know who this question was for, about did I have a bachelor's degree in a relevant field as well. When I went to college, we were still writing with pencils and paper at that point. My degree is in business management. It's not in a technical degree, so to speak. There were management information systems degrees at that time. That was the technical flavor in the business college for someone who wanted to get into technology. But it was effectively the management classes with programming. That's not IT. That's programming. That's computer science. And I didn't want to go into computer science because I didn't want to be a programmer. And that's, I know we can have an argument about what computer science actually is, but it's effectively software development. The vast majority, the bulk of that is software development and hardware development, which is also has a huge software chunk to it as well. But the software side of things is very different than the IT side of things. And universities don't tend to teach IT. They tend to teach computer science. And so there wasn't really a great option at a state university for someone who wanted to get into technology. So what I did was get a management degree, but while I was in college, I worked for the computing center at my university. So I got to work with mainframes. I got to, at the time, got to work with one of the fastest computers in the world, liquid nitrogen cooled computer. It's created by Controlled Data, which is no longer around, obviously. It was called the ETA-10. There was a cryogenerator in the back room. So the liquid nitrogen would come through the supercomputer, cool the supercomputer, come out the other side of the supercomputer hot, and then it would be refrozen into the liquid nitrogen and put into storage tanks. So it was constant. Now, of course, at that time, we had PCs. I did not live in the ancient world. We had PC labs and we had normal laser printers and the things you would normally find with computers. But the computing center, having that level of computing technology was incredibly important. So they could do things like, this was the very first beginnings of doing hurricane modeling. You know, because we had so much computing power available, you could really create these very advanced algorithms for managing what would happen during a hurricane. And so we have amazing output on these electrostatic plotters that would be able to create these amazing charts of where they thought the hurricanes were going that you could only do if you had the computing power. Now, today, of course, we've greatly increased computing powers. What was on that mainframe is easily probably on my iPhone. But that's a good example of how you sort of take where you are, apply it to the technology, and then just learn as much as you can. And it seems to lead you down a path. You'll start to find that you're sort of on a river, and the IT river sort of, depending on what you're learning at that time, is going around the different bends. And sometimes you don't know where that's taking you. But having the knowledge of managing outages, having conversations with people about the outage, calling people who are on call, working with the vendors to come in and fix the problems, talking with the end users about when you expect the problems to be resolved. These are skills I learned and used throughout my career. Stuff I did in college with a mainframe helped me with implementing the newest next generation firewall technologies that nobody had ever seen before. But you don't think of it that way when you're back in the grind. You're in the trenches thinking, is this ever going to amount to anything? Yes, it is. Just stick with it. Just follow the path, follow the river. It will take you. And sometimes you have no idea. It's remarkable where the river goes. It's remarkable where the path takes you, but the value, the things you're going to learn along the way will be very valuable in your future. You just don't even know it yet. That I think is a good one to consider. So don't go get a job as a bartender because you think it makes more money. It might make more money today, but there's a longer term view of this and being able to make that happen. I'm noticing, I warned you at the very beginning that the internet would be a little sketchy. And indeed, the internet is being a little sketchy. I'm watching my cache drop right now. So those of you that are watching, you're probably running into that. And if it's very bad, I will absolutely make sure that we're able to put a better version online if that's the case. Should you go for the 1001, 1002? Well, if you can get it done by October, absolutely. Go get it done by then. I think it'd be pretty useful to have the 1001 and 1002. So feel free to go and learn those things if you think you can get it done by October. If you can't get it done by October, then you may want to shift. You may want to shift your gears and go for something else along those lines. That's my recommendation when you go into these. Another question, I'm learning a lot of Linux now. Excellent. Is there a reason I stopped making Linux Plus videos? Well, the Linux Plus side of things, I certainly am someone who I like Linux too. I use a lot of Linux. If you're on ProfessorMesser.com, you are on Linux machines. My database is on Linux. Everything we do, there's a ton of back-end processes that does tons of Linux. But what I have found when I started making these Linux Plus videos, I did more than 10 years ago, and I only made a handful of them before I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do, was really more about the Linux community and what they thought of the videos more than anything. And I just wasn't happy with the videos I was making, and what the feedback that I was getting was not the feedback I wanted. And so I thought, it's not clicking. I'm not happy with these. We're not going to do these. It's maybe that's the Linux community now as well. I don't know. But certainly one that, it made me think, maybe this isn't the best path. Let's do something else. And ended up doing, I think I shifted to Security Plus at that point. So it just made more sense. I have still been looking at Linux. I think Linux Plus would be very valuable to have there. But I think one of the challenges with Linux is just big. There's a lot there that you would have to work through on the Linux side. It's a big exam. But it would be a good one. I think it would be a good one to do. I might revisit it. It's on, if I put it in a list, it's probably in the top 5 of the next things that are there. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see if it's what's happening there. So again, I apologize for the somewhat challenging buffering situation. Looks like we're back up though. Everything seems to be getting better on the caching side. I know you can't see it on your side. I monitor from here. This number, can you even see the number, the 15% there? Yes, you can. So that's the cache number. It needs to be small. See, it's jumping around. It's getting much better now. We like to have it somewhere around 3%, which is normal operating, which is where we are at the moment. Finally, we're back there. When it got down to 10, 11%. So that's, and see, now it's going back down again. So clearly the internet is not working well with us today. It is taunting me, and we may just have to deal with that. Although we are an hour and a half into the after show, it may be trying to tell me something along those lines. Also, to make the point, and the question again on the retirement date for the 1001 and 1002 is October the 20th. They did at one point say it was going to be July. Then they said maybe August. So you're not wrong thinking it was August. At one point, they said it was going to be August, but then they finally realized for almost every other A+ transition, it's been a 6-month transition period. And so if we release it on April the 20th, we really should allow people that 6 months and give them until October the 20th. And that's why October the 20th ended up being the actual number. If you're ever wondering what the actual retirement date is, you're just not sure, CompTIA website, that's the place you go. They will tell you exactly what the date is, and it is October the 20th, just so you're aware. That's also one of those that is a pretty important date. And as I said, there will be people working towards that October 20th date. They will be taking exams on October the 20th. So if you're someone who's studying, you're thinking, maybe I'll take them in October, but I don't want to be the only one. It's okay. You're not. There will be people taking this exam on the final day. I guarantee you, it always works that way. Some people pass and it's great. Some people don't, and it's not so great. That's always the challenge. And this is Michael says, well, I'm gonna sit for 1001 in a week. Great. That gives you about 3 months before you now need to get the 1002 done, and that's a great time frame. I think you're fine for that. The timing is always an issue. You should always be aware of the retirement dates and make sure you know when that's going to be. But you need to make the decision on which way you go with that, whether it's going to be the 1001, 1002, or 1101 and 1102. There are big differences. Make sure you figure out which one that's going to be. That's the only thing I think really is important over the next 3 months. Now, of course, I'm looking forward to October, because on October the 20th, there won't be any more questions about that. Everybody knows they have to go to the 1101 and 1102. That's the key. Should I start applying for jobs while preparing for the 1101 Core 1? Well, it certainly can't hurt. However, if you're applying for jobs where they specifically say you must have an A+ certification to get this job, well, maybe it would be best to get the A+ first and then send them the resume. Otherwise, you're sort of wasting their time. And some organizations will only accept your resume after a certain number of months have gone by. So you can't just send one every week. They'll take it once, and then you can't submit another resume for 3 months or 6 months. You don't want to send a resume that doesn't meet the requirements for a job and then get locked out of any future potential for the next number of months. That's not a great idea either. So, of course, check the job, see what they think. But if there's no specific requirement for A+, why wouldn't you? And I think it doesn't hurt to put on the resume that you are studying for the A+ certification, but you obviously can't say that you are certified unless you really are. So, and I don't know how much that really helps. It might be a talking point during an interview. Like, oh, I see that you're working on an A+. How's that coming? You can tell them, oh, I finished the 1101. I'm working on the 1102, or whatever it happens to be. It's a place where you can at least have a conversation. That's also useful too. Let's see. I'll get another question in here before my voice gives out, which would be really good. One of the things I recommend that people do, because people are talking in here about there's a lot of help desk jobs for IT. Are there frequent layoffs in IT, like software development? Well, every organization's a little bit different. And I would recommend, if you're looking into an IT job, that you look very carefully at the open positions in your particular area, in your geography. Because the jobs in DC are very security plus focused. The jobs in Boise, Idaho may have a completely different focus. The jobs in Dallas, Texas may be completely different. The jobs in Minneapolis, in Chicago, and LA, they're very different in what they're looking for. So look through those job postings to really understand what an employer would like from you. And if they're saying, we just need you to be familiar with Windows, but they're not saying A+, they're not mentioning a specific certification, yeah, go ahead and submit a resume. It's what can it hurt? You should not be the one to decide you're not qualified for a job. And if you're automatically censoring yourself, that is not what you should be doing. If you look at a job posting and you think, yeah, I could do that, send them a resume. Even if they say, we require that you have this, this, and this, and you don't have those, okay, send them the resume anyway. If you think you really are someone who qualifies for that job, send them the resume. They'll reject it, perhaps, or maybe they won't. But you should not be the one to reject it. You let them reject it. You should embrace the rejection. In the job hunt, you should be ready for the no. You should be ready for them to tell you, nope, you aren't getting this job. That's completely normal. Guys, we're used to this. We're used to rejection. Just use this as your superpower. Your ability to be rejected is your superpower. So just send the resume in and just keep sending the resumes. There are people on Reddit that have mentioned, I've sent 100 resumes. I had 4 callbacks. I got 1 job. Not a great ratio, but it doesn't hurt to send a resume. Just throw it out. Why wouldn't you? Of course you should. So that's why, especially when they say you must have this kind of experience, you must have this kind of job, you must have this kind of, but these things change day to day. The people who are doing the interviewing may be just looking for a very narrow scope. They're not getting the right people. And suddenly their boss says, hey, we got to get people hired by next week. You got anybody that we could hire for this? They go, oh, let me pull in some more resumes. Here's one. He doesn't have his A+ yet, but boy, we need a warm body. And they look like they got all the other skills, so let's get them in here. So you never know what's going on behind the scenes. So just send it in, see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? Oh, they rejected you? Oh, welcome to the club. We've all been there. So just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep doing it. Just keep sending out the resumes. That's how to get my 11 series A+ course notes out so fast. Does it come with labs? It's course notes. There's not labs there. It's just the notes. They're the first thing I create the entire course on my system. Every video is mapped out before I start shooting. So before I start shooting, I make the course notes. I literally have course notes before there is a course. So the course notes have been around now since, what, April? I've had them forever. So it seems. They've been out for months. So that's how they come out so fast, is that I do the notes first actually make the course, then I make the notes, then I actually shoot the video. So these notes are made before the videos are shot. I will also tell you, as a little inside baseball, occasionally I'll shoot a video and I'll think, I don't like the way that sounded. I don't like the way that looks, or the content was not exactly what I wanted. So I'll update it. So the course notes today might have minor changes from when they were initially introduced, but nothing substantial. There's no factual errors that are corrected. It's just me changing some wording here and there. So I constantly am tweaking a few things here and there. So occasionally I will put out a new revision of course notes, but it's always a minor update. But that's how they get out so quick. Do they come with labs? I don't do labs myself, primarily because I just love the CompTIA labs. Those aren't the labs. Here they are. I love these labs. They are comprehensive. They are extensive. They provide you with everything you need for the 1101 and 1102. And what's new is that we really didn't have great labs for the 1101. And now we got extensive labs for the 1101. Just tons of labs for the 1101. It's remarkable how many labs are there now. And in that 3D form, and you're working with these actual systems. I think I had, where's that Chrome that I set up? Because I had another lab going. I wanted to do another one on configuring a Soho router. I guess I need to close out the one that I currently have. But that's one of the advantages, is being able to work through all of these labs and really trying to find a way to get 1101 content in a lab. But the 1101 is so hardware oriented that I like, at least we've got the option there. Oh, where do you get the notes? Notes are on my website. They're available on my site. These are available right from the pull-down menus at the top of the site. There's also links on the video pages, so you've got options for that too. And the labs are also there under the recommended study materials, so you've got options there too. So you've got those, and those are the CompTIA labs. Those are paid for labs, and you have the choice of doing just 1101 or 1102 or a combo of both to have that there. Here's the lab for, put my fat head in the picture. There we go. So here's the labs for the configuring a Soho router. Let's make this a little bit bigger so we can actually see it. Maybe that's too big. I can also change this window sizes and do different things. And it tells you what to do. From the dock, do this. It's like I got Ubuntu up. So it steps you through everything you would want to do. From the dock, start GNS3. Well, it's like we're actually working with actual firmware on this. And as you go through, you can check box, okay, I'm done with that. Select recent projects, the 220.11.01 home router GNS. Let's browse and see if we can, it's from recent projects. So I'm already not following the instructions. Cancel recent projects. There we go. Let me follow the instructions and choose the home router GNS3. There we go. This is actually nice. If you've ever tried to install GNS3 before, it is just a frustrating episode. So this is already installed for you. You just run it. Okay, I did that. Check. What type of port on the router should PC1 be connected to? So here's PC1. Should it be on the WAN port or the LAN port? Kind of gives you these two. Well, these are on the inside network, so that'd probably be the LAN port, right? So let me click LAN and let's score it, and it says correct. So the labs kind of give you that check mark in the way of things. In the GNS3 app, from the devices toolbar, add link. Cursor will turn from a pointer to a cross, and we can go through, and we keep going through the GNS3. We're actually working on an actual network here. It turned to a cross. Check. Select PC1 from the dropdown. Select Ethernet 0. Move your cursor to the router. Select LAN 1. All right, so let's go to ETH0. Did I get the link in there? Did I not click the right thing? I already clicked the wrong thing. Now I've got it running. Did I? That one's done. And we can even step through the other one. Says, do I want to continue? Yes, I want. You've skipped ahead. Do you want to continue? They'll be marked complete. No, I don't want to skip ahead. Here, let's keep going. Did I not? I did skip ahead. There we go. Now we get going. And now I can actually click that, the PC1, choose ETH0, go to the router, click that one, choose LAN 1, and there, now the lab's down. Now I made the link. So there, I'm just sort of stepping through these labs one at a time, making those happen. Those are pretty useful. I really like, there's a couple things I like about these labs that I've never seen other places. One is that you get this sort of questions thrown in as you're going to kind of check, do you really know what you're doing? And if you don't, you can get a kind of a level set. And then you can check as you go through all of these. On some of these where you type in a password, you can simply click in the description and it will automatically type it on the screen next to you. So you don't have to type in capital PASSW0RD exclamation and get it all wrong every time. Very useful. So that's why I like using those. They're really, really good. I like the lab. I wouldn't have them on my site if I didn't like them. I never put anything on my site, or I never recommend anything on my site unless I've installed it myself. I've run through it. I like it. And then I recommend it. There are other labs in the past that I have not put on my site specifically because I went through them and I just wasn't happy with them. So those are the labs. Those are the CompTIA CertMaster labs, or on my website, it's the interactive pack that includes both my labs and the course notes. So that's are they going to be like this on the test? This is much more detailed than what you would get on the exam. The exam is a much simpler interface because you don't have a lot of time. You need to kind of hit the question, drag and drop, click the thing, and you're off to the next. So these are more involved so that you're ready for other types of simulations, performance-based questions, and other things. Kind of give you the concepts and really identify what types of exam objectives you need to know and how you can apply those in a real-world type environment. That's what that is. The idea of these labs is to kind of give you a feel for what is it like to work with these Soho devices? What's it like to work with a router? What's it like to configure an operating system? What's it like to install this piece of this? So that's what we're working towards in these labs. I think they really hit the nail right on the head with their latest iteration. These are brand new on the 1101 and 1102. These are not the labs. These are not the same lab engine that were on the 1001, 1002. So these are brand new, and I like what they've done. Like I said, I wouldn't have it on their site if I didn't like it. Okay, well, I think that that brings us to close to almost an extra 2 hours in the after show. I think that's a pretty good place to stop, though. I want to thank you for the time you spent in the first hour on the study group. Thank you for the questions that you had in the after show. As I often say, we really can't do this without you. Thank you for your generosity with your time, and in some cases, your super chats. Thank you for that. And I also want to thank the people that offline, there's also the super thanks, which is a way to contribute when you're watching the video to the ongoing effort. It's not a required thing. I try not to ask for donations. That's not what we do. I want you to get something for your money. So if you want to get course notes, pay for the course notes, I'll give you something in return. I like doing that part of it. But that's sort of where we come from with trying to make this entire crazy experiment continue working. And so far, it's working just great. And it's working great because of you. So thank you so much for all of your support, not just now, but for all the support you've been giving. It really has been great. And we're just going to continue to keep this whole party going as long as we possibly can. Eat all you want. We'll make more. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your time. We will come on back on Thursday. We've got our 1102 study group. So more A+ yet to come. I've already written the questions. They're already in the database. All we need now is you. Hope we'll see you back here on Thursday. Thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next time on the A+ study group.